Chapter 839. Zhu Xiaoyu grunted as her primordial spirit trembled intensely. She almost suffered internal injuries. Fortunately, her cultivation was deep and her spiritual will was firm, allowing her to withstand the sudden shock. When a domain was broken, it would cause a backlash to the user. The fact that Zhu Xiaoyu was unharmed showed how deep her foundation was. Her strength had far surpassed the ordinary realm. Zhu Xiaoyu's eyes flickered as she looked at Li Daochong with a hint of fear. She could tell that Li Daochong was strong, but she did not expect him to be so strong. Those three monsters were only SOSO. Just how strong was he to break the clear sky domain that she was most proud of in one move? Su Fei, who thought that he was going to die, felt his body turn cold as he watched everything unfold in disbelief. He looked at Li Daochong with even more fear in his eyes. The petite female cultivator's move was so weak that Su Fei did not even have the strength to resist it, but the purple-robed cultivator broke it in one move. "Thank you for saving me, master." Su Fei came back to his senses and quickly bowed respectfully to Li Daochong. "There's no need to thank me. There's no free lunch in this world. Give me all the battle merits you just obtained," Li Daochong said lightly. Su Fei did not dare to disobey. Although these battle merits could allow him to evolve quickly, what was the use of evolving without his life? Su Fei took a step forward and came in front of Li Daochong, transferring all the battle merits he had just absorbed to Li Daochong. With so many high-level participants, the battle merits were a huge number, more than 10 million. Li Daochong naturally did not stand on ceremony and accepted them all. However, Li Daochong did not immediately add these battle merits into his calculation. Instead, he stored them in his trading reserve. Therefore, Li Daochong's ranking on the battle merits list did not change. "Master, what else do you need me to do?" Su Fei asked carefully. "Nothing else. You can leave." Li Daochong shook his head. Su Fei did not understand. "You've already fulfilled our agreement. If you don't leave, I'll attack you as a hunter. Do as you deem fit," Li Daochong said emotionlessly. "Hiss." Su Tuo sucked in a breath of cold air. He had thought that he had found a powerful backer, but it turned out that he had been thinking too much. With it being said like this, how could Su Qiao still dare to stay? Without another word, he executed the void underworld art and fled. Zhu Xiaoyu did not give chase. She merely floated in the void and watched quietly. In fact, she was adjusting her aura. Li Daochong stood with his hands clasped behind his back. A purple light flew back. The purple mystic saber was like a loyal spirit pet, joyfully asking for its master's praise. It let out a light and melodious sound of a silver bell. Xuanyi's beautiful face was reflected on the blade. A ray of multicolored light shone from the dusky clouds in the distance. Mu Wanrong had arrived late. Seeing Zhu Xiaoyu, Mu Wanrong's heart skipped a beat. She could not help but feel an invisible pressure. Facing this temperamental fiend, Mu Wanrong suddenly felt irritated. "Li Daochong, I didn't expect your strength to have reached such a level. It looks like the rumors of you using despicable means to plot against the talisman of myriad wonders and Ghoul are just rumors," Zhu Xiaoyu said playfully after stabilizing her aura. "Is there such a rumor? Li doesn't know about it. So all the things that have happened during this time were the doing of the talisman of myriad wonder?" Li Daochong said thoughtfully. "More or less. The talisman of myriad wonder was indeed the one who started it. However, it has expanded to its current state. There are simply too many people who want to add insult to injury," Zhu Xiaoyu replied with a shrug. "Talisman of myriad wonder. I'll remember it. Thank you for your advice, Fairyly. I still have important matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first," Li Daochong said as he waved his hand. "Leave? Wait, I've finally found a worthy opponent. How can I let you leave just like that?" Zhu Xiaoyu was confused. She did not expect Li Daochong to be so casual. She had thought that this guy was going to fight her to the end. Li Daochong did not care about what Zhu Xiaoyu said. With a thought, he disappeared with Xiao Ying in his arms. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Mu Wanrong. Zhu Xiaoyu was anxious. "You want to leave?" "No way," she shouted and chased after them. However, When Zhu Xiaoyu reached where Li Daochong was, he was nowhere to be seen. In the blink of an eye, Li Daochong was already 1,000 miles away with Mu Wanrong and Xiaoying. When the thousand sound escape was used to its fullest extent, no cultivator of the same level could match it. Even a cultivator who had gone through the tribulation might not be able to catch up. Even though Zhu Xiaoyu had many trump cards and was a spirit paragon, it was still wishful thinking for her to stop Li Daochong. Damn it, he ran away just like that. Li Daochong, you really don't put me in your eyes. The next time we meet, I'll definitely let you know how powerful I am. Zhu Xiaoyu gritted her teeth and said unwillingly. In the blink of an eye, only Zhu Xiaoyu and Feng Buji were left. The void exhaustion had left, and the weakening power had disappeared. Feng Buji was rapidly recovering. The two looked at each other, and the corner of Feng Buji's eyes twitched. He had a bad feeling and immediately said, "Young miss, I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. If we meet again in the future, I'll definitely spar with you. Goodbye." Feng Buji said and was about to leave. "Brother Buji, we haven't even caught up. Why are you in such a hurry? Am I so scary?" Zhu Xiaoyu said with a faint smile. "Young miss, don't misunderstand. I still have things to do. Now is not the time to catch up." Feng Buji's face twitched. He felt that something was wrong. "I think now is a good time to catch up," Zhu Xiaoyu said, and her slender hand gently moved in the air. A beam of green light flashed by. Feng Buji was shocked. He raised the weapon in his hand to block it. However, he had not even recovered 1/10 of his strength. How could he block it? With a puff, the green light flashed past. Feng Buji stared at Zhu Xiaoyu with his eyes wide open. His gaze was filled with anger and unwillingness. His primordial spirit was pierced by a bamboo leaf, and his body dissipated. Feng Buji's vision turned black. This was the first time he was killed in the Jiuquan realm after going to the resurrection point. He was the second on the prodigy roll of the Kuan Empire. He did not expect this to happen. Because of Li Daochong's abrupt departure, Zhu Xiaoyu's stomach was filled with anger. She vented her anger on Feng Buji. Li Daochong was focused on Silver Bottle. Naturally, he did not have the heart to fight. If it was not for Xiaoying being in trouble, he would have gone to Kingdom Number 2. There was no trace of Silver Bottle in Kingdom Number 3. The only clue he had was the Silver Moon Blade and Silver Bottle. Under Mu Wanrong's guidance, Li Daochong headed to Kingdom Number 2 at full speed without stopping. The appearance of the Silver Moon Saber caused Li Daochong's calm state of mind to become restless. Something seemed to have happened to Silver Bottle. Was there a loophole in the Jiuquan realm? Did Silver Bottle happen to bump into the muzzle of a gun? Or did someone deliberately target Silver Bottle to deal with him? Li Daochong's mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of possibilities. Along the way, Li Daochong did not engage in any hunting activities. Other than the necessary rest, he was rushing. Li Daochong's speed was not affected at all as he brought Mu Wanrong and Xiaoying along. Xiaoying was already used to Li Daochong's amazing speed. Hence, she did not feel anything when they were moving at high speed. Mu Wanrong was different. She had never seen such a fast speed. It was not an exaggeration to say that he could travel 1,000 miles in one step. In less than 10 days, Li Daochong brought the two girls to Kingdom Number 2 City Gate. "Do you remember the face of the contestant you killed?" Li Daochong looked down at Kingdom Number 2 and asked Mu Wanrong. That person was the 7th-seeded contestant from the Kuan Empire's Cloud Jade Vestment. He was ranked 89th in the Kuan Top 10. How could I not remember him? As long as he's still in Kingdom Number 2, it's easy to find him. However, to find someone in such a vast region in such a short time without using some extreme measures is like finding a needle in a haystack. Mu Wanrong told him the truth. "What kind of measures?" Li Daochong asked in return. "Spend battle points to buy information." Mu Wanrong replied immediately. Chapter 840. What Li Daochong lacked the least now was military exploits. Under Mu Wanrong's guidance, the three of them arrived at the Second Imperial Capital Market. Ever since Mu Wanrong entered the Jiuquan Divine Realm, she had been hanging out in the Second Imperial Capital, so she was familiar with everything here. The person she was looking for was called Wei Yuliang, who belonged to a third-rate spiritual internet company. In the outside world, he was engaged in buying and selling information and acted as an informant. Now that he was here, he was still doing his old job. By selling information, he could earn military exploits without moving a finger. She didn't know what channels Wei Yuliang had behind him. In short, there was nothing he didn't know. Of course, Wei Yuliang was not omnipotent. His information range was only in the Second Imperial Capital. Beyond this range, Wei Yuliang's knowledge was very limited. Li Daochong followed Mu Wanrong to an inconspicuous shop. It was old and shabby, and the light was dim. At the door, there were a few idle participating cultivators standing in twos and threes. These cultivators were of different shapes and sizes. They looked like street gangsters. There was a strange look in their eyes when they looked at people. In this area, the good and the bad were mixed together, and the atmosphere was foul. Li Daochong and the other two walked on the street, looking out of place. Several brutal-looking cultivators gathered together. When they saw Xiao Ying and Mu Wanrong, they couldn't hide the greed in their eyes. If it weren't for Mu Wanrong's strong aura, someone would have come forward to find fault with them. As for Li Daochong, he was treated like air. A cultivator who hadn't even reached the soul formation stage would not be noticed wherever he went. Although Xiao Ying's aura was restrained, there was a strong murderous aura around her. Many cultivators could clearly sense the smell of blood. They were more or less afraid of this petite and cute female cultivator. The shop was at the end of the street. Mu Wanrong whispered a few words to a cultivator at the door. The cultivator nodded slightly and opened the door to let Li Daochong and the other two enter. The moment they stepped through the small door, Li Daochong's eyes flashed with a faint light. Xiao Ying's expression also changed. The master and disciple looked at each other. "Master, there's something strange." Xiao Ying immediately sent a voice transmission. "Let's wait and see. If that Mu fellow dares to play any tricks, I'm going to start a massacre." Li Daochong's killing intent surged. This inconspicuous little door was actually the entrance to an extremely powerful spiritual array. Once one stepped through, they would enter the spiritual array. This spirit array was extremely strange. Even Li Daochong could not completely detect it. It seemed to be vast and boundless and illusory. The grade of this spirit array was extremely high. Apart from the twin dragon array left behind by the monster race on Blackwood Star, Li Daochong had never seen such a profound spirit array. Behind the small door was a long and narrow passageway that stretched for dozens of meters. The environment was somewhat stifling, but after walking out, it suddenly became clear and bright, entering a unique courtyard. The courtyard was quaint, with a small bridge over flowing water. In the middle of the rockery, there was an octagonal pavilion that looked like a beetle that was about to spread its wings and take flight. In the pavilion, two cultivators were playing a game of chess. However, such an elegant place would first make people think of a white-haired immortal with a youthful complexion living here. But the two people playing chess, one with a wretched appearance and the other with a ferocious look, instantly destroyed the artistic conception of this place. The young cultivator with a wretched appearance was Wei Yuliang. "Dear friend Mu, long time no see. I heard that you went to the number 3 Imperial Capital to plunder military merits. Why did you come back?" Wei Yuliang put down a chess piece, but his eyes never left the chessboard. "I've let dear friend Wei see a joke. Wanrong just went to the number 3 Imperial Capital. How could I have the ability to plunder military merits? Didn't I just come back?" Mu Wanrong's expression was slightly embarrassed. "Oh, is that so? With dear friend Mu's ability, you went to the number 3 Imperial Capital only to be a passerby? Dear friend Mu is too modest. Green Sun Drug Refinery is one of the top 10 cultivation enterprises in the human domain. Besides Lu Yuandao, dear friend Mu is the most outstanding one. Green Sun Drug Refinery isn't called the mysterious ice fairy for nothing. In the entire spirit world of the human domain, there are only a few dozen people who are stronger than dear friend Mu. I don't believe that all those evildoers have gathered in the number 3 Imperial Capital," Wei Yuliang said with a faint smile. "Dear friend Wei, don't make fun of me. I came here today to inquire about the whereabouts of a person. Mu Wanrong didn't want to talk about it, so she got straight to the point. People come to me to inquire about information. Dear friend Mu, you know the rules, right? Wei Yuyang asked. Dear friend Wei, please state your price. Mu Wanrong said straightforwardly. Wei Yuyang raised his head, looked at Mu Wanrong for the first time, and smiled mischievously. Dear friend Mu, you sound like you have a lot of money. Then, I won't keep you in suspense. There are less than 2 months before the end of the first round of the test. So, it's not easy to inquire about information. The market has changed. Ordinary cultivators get 10,000 battle points. Those on the Tianjiao list get 20,000 battle points. Those on the Tianjiao list get 30,000 battle points. Those on the Tianjiao list get 100,000 battle points. Dear friend Mu, tell me, who do you want to inquire about? Huijini, Mu Wanrong said. Wei Youyang's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Mu Wanrong, then glanced at Li Daochong and Xiaoying who were standing behind her. He continued, this person is the third-seeded candidate of the Cloud Jade Vestments, ranked 35th on Ingun's Prodigy leaderboard. His cultivation level is not weak, and his position in the Cloud Jade Vestments is quite high. Cloud Jade Spirit Supremacy values this person a lot. If you want to know anything about this person, you'll need to pay 100,000 battle points, no less. Deal, Mu Wanrong said without thinking. 100,000 battle points wasn't a small amount, but Mu Wanrong had agreed so readily. Wei Youyang's eyes flashed. He and the ferocious-looking cultivator on the chessboard looked at each other. The two of them seemed to know each other's secret signal. They could see the greed in each other's eyes. Dear friend Mu is a straightforward person. Give me the battle points first. Then, give me the information, Wei Yuyang said with a profiteering look on his face. Mu Wanrong transferred 100,000 battle points to Wei Yuyang without hesitation. After entering the number 2 imperial capital, Li Daochong had given her 500,000 battle points and left everything to her to deal with. Mu Wanrong didn't feel any heartache since it wasn't her battle points. She just wanted to find Huijini as soon as possible so that Li Daochong would let her go as soon as possible. Mu Wanrong was always on tenterhooks when she stayed with Li Daochong. After all, this guy was now the most wanted person of the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. The 10,000 Wonders Talisman had offered a generous reward. Therefore, all the participants in the Jiushuan God world were looking for Li Daochong. Mu Wanrong didn't want to be implicated. Of course, she was also afraid of Li Daochong's strength. In short, she just wanted to get away from him and regain her freedom. No one would have thought that the famous Black Ice Fairy of the twin prides of the Green Sun Country would have such a difficult time. Wei Yuyang took the battle points and said without hesitation, Huijini returned from hunting 3 days ago. He has been in seclusion in the Jiushuan Cultivation Pagoda, which is 500 kilometers away from the number 2 imperial capital. You can find him first and wait for him to come out. The Jiushuan Cultivation Pagoda is guarded by Jiushuan guards. Those things are no different from steel puppets. The Cultivation Pagoda doesn't allow people to disturb the cultivators who are in seclusion. Mu Wanrong's eyes moved, and her heart sank. How long would she have to wait for Huijini to come out? Why did you set it up outside the imperial capital if you don't allow people to disturb the cultivators who are in seclusion? Li Daochong's voice came from behind. Taoist Mu, doesn't your follower know the rules? Wei Youyang's voice turned cold. Brat, now that you're here, you should check if you have enough battle merits before asking questions. If you dare say anything else, this senior will rip your mouth off. The ferocious-looking cultivator glared at Li Daochong. Mu Wanrong complained in her heart. Papa, 2 crisp sounds. Wei Yuyang and the fierce-looking cultivator didn't have time to react. Their faces were burning. They didn't react until Xiao Ying's hand fell. If you disrespect my master again, I will kill you without mercy, Xiao Ying said coldly. The surroundings were instantly filled with killing intent. Chapter 841. Ever since Wei Yuyang entered the Jiushuan Divine Realm, he had been engaged in the business of buying and selling information. Everyone who came here to inquire about information treated him respectfully, for fear that they would offend him and fail to obtain accurate information. Not to mention that they had to ask him for help. Wei Yuliang's mysterious background was enough to deter most of the cultivators. He could get any information at will, and it was very accurate. It was absolutely impossible for him to do that without great ability. The network behind him must be very complicated, and his connections must be very wide. It was not surprising that he had a close relationship with a cultivator who was in the tribulation passing stage. She was used to being flattered. Who would have thought that someone would dare to slap her in the face? The key point was that Wei Yuliang and the ferocious cultivator were not weak. They were both at the peak of the divine transformation realm, and their combat strength was comparable to that of an ordinary cultivator at the middle stage of the void refinement realm. The two of them were also first-class ordinary geniuses, and their strength should not be underestimated. However, they did not see clearly how the little girl behind Mu Wanrong attacked just now. Their faces were slapped so hard that they were dumbfounded. Mu Wanrong's expression changed drastically. She gasped, and before the word no reached her throat, the two slaps had already been done. In an instant, Mu Wanrong froze on the spot. Her heart was in turmoil, and she felt that something was wrong. If Li Daochong had not planted a restriction on her, she would have run away immediately. "Bitch, you're courting death." The ferocious cultivator suddenly stood up and roared. He picked up a sharp long saber and slashed at Xiaoying. At the same time, Wei Yuliang pressed a gray button onto the chess table. Suddenly, a shrill alarm sounded. "It's over," Mu Wanrong muttered in her heart, and her face turned pale. Whoosh! A purple light flashed across the sky. The ferocious cultivator who was slashing at Xiaoying paused and opened his mouth in horror. He wanted to say something, but did not say anything. His whole body was broken into 7 pieces. Before they could be separated, they exploded from the inside out and turned into a rain of blood on the ground. Then he disappeared and went to the resurrection point. Wei Yuliang's heart skipped a beat. Before he could recover from the slap, his personal bodyguard, the great cultivator Ghost King Blade, who had once dominated a star field, was instantly killed. Mu Wanrong's mind buzzed. She looked at Li Daochong as if she was looking at an idiot. Perhaps there was still room for negotiation between the two slaps just now. At most, he would bleed a lot to compensate for it, and the grudge could still be resolved. Now that he had directly destroyed the other party, it could be said that he had completely formed a grudge, and it was impossible for him to resolve it. "You." Wei Yuliang looked at Li Daochong in shock and was speechless for a while. After a while, he said, "How dare you kill him? Do you know who you are facing? You're courting death. It's none of your business what Mr. Li wants to do. Can you answer Mr. Li's question now? Why was the Zhoushuan cultivation tower built outside the imperial capital? It's not allowed to be disturbed. Wouldn't it be solved if it was directly set up in a safe area inside the imperial capital?" Li Daochong said lightly. "Haha." Wei Yuliang looked up and laughed. "Do you think I will answer your question?" Li Daochong grinned. "You will." Just as his voice fell, Mu Wanrong said neurotically, "Don't do it again." Li Daochong did not listen. Just as he raised his hand, Xiaoying appeared behind Wei Yuliang like a ghost, and a cold dagger was placed on Wei Yuliang's neck. Wei Yuliang reacted and tried to break free. However, he could not move. A terrifying killing intent completely enveloped him, and even his primordial spirit was firmly suppressed. "Master asked you a question. If you don't answer, I will search your soul." Xiaoying's voice was as cold as ice. Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk at this moment, several rays of light shot in from outside the courtyard. 3 men and 2 women, wearing different colored robes, appeared in 4 directions outside the pavilion. The cultivation of the 5 people was at the early stage of the void refinement realm. However, with a little spiritual sense, one would find that their bone ages were over 50 years old. Among the contestants, cultivators of this bone age were rare. This was because they could not be considered as geniuses, and their future development potential was very limited. However, this did not mean that they did not have strength. After all, they had cultivated for 20 to 30 years, and their foundation could not be compared with the young cultivators. Their combat strength and experience were much higher than the young cultivators, so they were much stronger than the cultivators of the same stage. You dare to kidnap Elder Wei? Could it be that you are muddle-headed and ignorant? A male cultivator wearing a light green robe and holding a long stick narrowed his eyes and said, "Hey, isn't this one of the twin prides of the Azure Sun sect, profound Ice Fairy Mu Wanrong? Fairy Mu, is your Azure Sun sect planning to become enemies with our Azure Dragon Spirit Network?" A female cultivator wearing a light yellow robe next to him looked at Mu Wanrong in confusion. Mu Wanrong had a belly full of bitterness, but she could not say anything. "I am not with them. I'm only here to refer them." Mu Wanrong struggled to say. "It doesn't matter if you are with them or not. They were brought here by you, so you have to take responsibility." The female cultivator in the light yellow robe said coldly. Mu Wanrong wanted to jump into the river. "I have placed a restriction on her. If she doesn't lead the way, she will die. You don't have to target her." Just as Mu Wanrong was suffering in silence, Li Daocheng's voice leisurely sounded from the side. The female cultivator in the light yellow robe glared at Li Daocheng and scolded, "Brat, you don't have the right to interrupt me. You better pray for yourself. From now on, the Azure Dragon Spirit Network will pursue you endlessly, not only in this Jioshuan God realm, but also outside." Whoosh, whoosh, as soon as the female cultivator finished speaking, a ghostly figure swept past. Before the female cultivator in the light yellow robe could react, her neck was swept by a silver light. Poochie, the female cultivator in the light yellow robe, exploded and disappeared. It was Xiao Ying who killed her, but the female cultivator in the light yellow robe saw her actions clearly. She didn't dodge because Li Daocheng had confined her with his immortal will, so she couldn't move. "Insolent brat, how dare you act so rashly in front of me?" A male cultivator shouted, and the spiritual energy around him exploded. Li Daocheng didn't even look at him and flicked his finger. Buzz, there was a muffled sound. The male cultivator stared at Li Daocheng in disbelief. Then his body collapsed and disappeared into the resurrection point. His primordial spirit was destroyed by Li Daocheng's finger. Mu Wanrong opened her mouth and was stunned. She knew Li Daocheng was strong, but she didn't expect him to be so strong. These five were the 5 guardians of the Azure Dragon Spirit Network. They were extremely powerful. If it weren't for their age, they wouldn't be able to enter the list of elites. In terms of combat power, they were comparable to the top 10 super geniuses on the list of elites. Even with such strength, they couldn't even last a second in front of Li Daocheng and his disciple. Mu Wanrong's view of the world collapsed in an instant. She wondered if she was hallucinating. She wasn't actually in a conscious state at all. The other 3 protectors were dumbfounded. Their previous aggressive appearance disappeared in an instant. The 3 of them tried to hide the fear in their hearts, but they couldn't hide it completely in their eyes. Wei Yuyang swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance left. His previous fearlessness also disappeared. He was re-examining this strange purple-robed young man in front of him. Even the Azure Dragon Spirit Network had to be wary of this kind of strength. "Get lost," Li Daocheng said in a deep voice. The remaining 3 were swept away by a gust of wind. They couldn't stand still and almost fell to the ground. They supported themselves with the weapons in their hands. The 3 guardians of the Azure Dragon Spirit Network had never been treated like this before. Their lungs were about to explode, but they didn't dare to do anything. They were all shocked by Li Daocheng's methods. But if they really left like this, the Azure Dragon Spirit Network's face would be completely lost. "Big brother, if you have any questions, just ask. I'll tell you everything I know." Wei Yuyang saw that the situation wasn't good. He didn't want the other 3 guardians to be slaughtered, so he quickly said, "Answer my question first." Li Daocheng said indifferently, "The Jioshuan Cultivation Tower is a high-end cultivation tower. There is only one set outside the imperial capital, and it can accommodate 300 people to cultivate at the same time. However, if you want to enter, you have to pay a lot of battle merits. 10,000 battle merits a day. This is just the entrance fee. If you want to have a good cultivation room, you have to pay more battle merits. However, The Jiushuan Cultivation Tower is a place specially set up by the Jiushuan spiritual sage according to the Jiushuan law. Cultivating for a day inside is more powerful than cultivating for 100 days outside. You can also quickly comprehend the mysteries of magical powers. It is a place that the geniuses on the Tianjiao list dream of. The reason why it was set up outside the imperial capital is because the cultivation tower is an independent space of the Jiushuan, and it can't be integrated with the complex structure of the imperial capital. In addition, the Jiushuan spiritual sage seems to have deliberately set it up so that the participants who want to enter the Jiushuan cultivation tower will compete with each other. In other words, as long as you can defeat the guards of the Jiushuan cultivation tower, you can do whatever you want a cultivation tower. Wei Yuyang answered in one breath. Wonderful book house. Chapter 842. There was a vast expanse of white sand 500 kilometers southwest of the third capital. The sun was high in the sky, and there were no clouds in the sky. A lizard was chasing a black beetle. In the Jiushuan realm of the gods, this kind of dog-eat-dog scene was everywhere, no different from the outside world. The mysteries of the Jiushuan realm of the gods were everywhere. The lizard and the black beetle, one in front and one behind, were extremely fast, but when they entered the sparkling sand, suddenly a white light shot from the sky. Pucci, the two Jiushuan creatures were instantly vaporized, and before they could react, they were already dead. The white light was shot from a tall white tower not far away. The white tower had 9 floors, and the bottom floor was the largest, and the higher you went, the smaller it became. At the top of the tower, there was a transparent white bead. Below the tower, 4 guards in white armor stood majestically in front of the tower, holding long spears. The white light just now was shot by one of the guards. This white tower was the Jiushuan realm of the gods, the Jiushuan cultivation tower that all the participants yearned for. Being able to cultivate in this pagoda was the dream of all the participants. If they were able to pry into a trace of the 9 mysteries law's profundity, then it would benefit them for a lifetime, and it was even possible to raise their own natural talent value. 3 rays of light flashed from the sky and landed in front of the Jiushuan cultivation tower. Since the first round of the test was coming to an end, there was an endless stream of participants coming to the Jiushuan cultivation tower every day. Most of them had reached the standard of the first round of the test and had accumulated 100,000 battle points. Since the first round of the test was over, these participants had set their sights on the next round. They came here to improve their strength as much as possible in the limited time, so that they would have enough capital to deal with the next round of the test. However, the participants who had such thoughts were not weak, and the Jiushuan cultivation tower only had 300 cultivation rooms. With limited resources, the competition was naturally fierce. Those who could come here were either rich or had outstanding strength. If they did not have any ability, they would only be a joke and be trampled on by others. As a matter of fact, there were already over 1,000 contestants lining up outside the Jiushuan cultivation pagoda. Under the watchful eyes of the Jiushuan guards, no one dared to act rashly. Each and every one of them obediently sat cross-legged in their designated positions and lined up in an orderly manner. The rules here were simple. First come, first served. Not daring to follow the rules wasn't unchangeable. As long as you had enough strength, it wasn't impossible to cut the queue. For example, the 3 rays of light that descended just now ignored the queuing rules and walked toward the Jiushuan cultivation tower under everyone's gazes. 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman. The woman was quite pretty and had her eyes on the top of her head. After she landed, she did not put the surrounding contestants in her eyes at all. If Li Daochong was here, he would have recognized her immediately. She was Wang Kai-dai, the one who had caused trouble for Li Daochong as soon as she entered the Jiushuan divine realm. Originally, with Wang Kai's ability, she shouldn't have been able to travel such a long distance from the 6th imperial capital to the 3rd imperial capital. However, this Wang clan was a super clan after all. They had a tribulation-passing old ancestor in their clan, so they were naturally not weak. As a direct descendant, Wang Kai-dai was naturally protected. Adding on her good looks and strength, she had many suitors. If a female cultivator had a good background, good looks, and decent strength, she naturally wouldn't lack any resources. Wang Kei's conflict with Li Daocheng had caused Zhang Dongjin to be prejudiced against her, so he cut off her feelings for Zhang Haoyan. In a fit of anger, Wang Kaidai directly abandoned Zhang Haoyan and threw herself into the arms of the myriad wonder talisman, Han Lai. Han Lai's background was 100 times more powerful than Zhang Haoyan's. The Zhang clan was indeed powerful, but could they be more powerful than the younger brother of the Qiansong Empire's #1 genius, Han Pe? Han Lai had always been interested in Wang Kaidai. The reason why the latter did not cater to him was because she knew that Han Lai was not worthy of her. Wang Kaidai knew that Han Lai was just playing with her. It was impossible for him to be serious. Zhang Haoyan was originally Wang Kei's best choice. She also knew that Zhang Haoyan was serious, but because of the matter with Li Daocheng, Zhang Dongjin rejected her. That coward Zhang Haoyan definitely wouldn't dare to go against Zhang Dongjin's wishes. Since her best choice was cut off, Wang Kaidai couldn't care less. She had to get a good ranking in this competition first. Thus, relying on Han Lai was naturally the best choice. Since Wang Kaidai was slightly more proactive, Han Lai would naturally take her by his side. At this moment, Han Lai, Wang Kaidai, and a follower landed in front of the Jiuquan cultivation pagoda. Han Lai promised Wang Kaidai that he would help her break through from the spirit-severing stage to the void refinement stage. In the Jiuquan divine realm, there was no better place to cultivate than the Jiuquan cultivation pagoda. Although Han Lai's reputation was great, those who could come to the Jiuquan cultivation pagoda were not to be trifled with. Without a diamond, who would dare to take on such a task? As the younger brother of Qiansong Continent's #1 prodigy, Han Lai's status was naturally high. However, he was still not Han Pe. No matter how high his status was, without strength as a foundation, he would still be looked down upon by others. To put it bluntly, the reason why they didn't provoke Han Lai wasn't because they were afraid of him, but because they were afraid of offending Han Pe. The fox borrowing the tiger's might. Han Lai was the fox, but he wasn't the tiger behind it. Behind the scenes, there were many young cultivators who were stronger than Han Lai, and they looked down on him from the bottom of their hearts. As for Han Lai, who was used to being praised by others, he didn't put most people in his eyes. Apart from the top 10 prodigies on the Heaven's Chosen list, the others were just a bunch of clowns. As soon as Han Lai landed, his face was filled with arrogance, and he didn't even look at the people queuing up. Bringing Wang Kaidai and his follower, he walked towards the entrance of the Jiuquan cultivation pagoda. Apart from Han Pe, Han Lai's confidence was also due to the follower beside him. This was a bodyguard that the Han family specially prepared for him. This follower's bone age was already 58 years old, and he was one of the oldest participants in this competition. He was just a step away from being unable to participate. This person's face was cold, and he didn't like to smile. He had a medium build, neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. He had a hooked nose, a pair of triangular eyes, and he wore a gray robe. He didn't look very eye-catching, but if one knew his background, they would be shocked. This person was called Soul Hooking Hand Shang Qinghai. He used to be a special assassin of the Dark Knight. He could have been promoted to a higher rank, but because he failed a mission, he almost lost his life and was even removed from the Dark Knight. Such a situation was no different from death. It was only a matter of time before he died. However, he wasn't fated to die. He was saved by the Han family's ancestor, Han Jingfeng, who also took care of the Dark Knight and redeemed his freedom. From then on, Shang Qinghai swore his loyalty to the Han family and became a bodyguard of the Han family. Although he was a bodyguard, it wasn't that serious. His main duty was to protect the younger generation of the Han family. Their salary and cultivation resources were not few either. They received much more than most of the professional bodyguards outside. Such a job was hard to find, so Shang Qinghai had no reason not to join the Han family. The Han family was a big tree. Shang Qinghai certainly knew such a simple truth. Shang Qinghai was already at the late stage of the soul formation realm when he was 30 years old. With the help of the Han family, he reached the peak of the Soul Formation realm in 5 years and the early stage of the Void Refinement realm in 3 years. He was at the early stage of the Void Refinement realm when he was 38 years old. He was at the middle stage of the Void Refinement realm when he was 45 years old, and he was at the late stage of the Void Refinement realm when he was 55 years old. In terms of strength, Shang Qinghai could be ranked at the top of the pyramid of all the participants in this competition, not to mention his talent and potential. With his brother's reputation and the protection of powerful bodyguards, Han Lai had no reason to bow down to anyone. At least in the divine realm of the Jiuquan, this was the case. After all, there were only young people here. In Han Lai's opinion, queuing didn't exist. The journey was quite smooth. Although there were a lot of angry eyes around, no one really dared to say anything. Han Lai looked down on everyone and sneered in his heart. He couldn't wait to point at these guys and shout in public that they were a bunch of trash. Wang Katie's vanity was satisfied to the greatest extent at this moment. She had never shown off in front of so many powerful cultivators. At first, Wang Kaidai felt a little sorry for Zhang Haoyan. After all, this guy was really infatuated with her. If they really became dual cultivation partners in the future, Wang Kaidai was 100% sure that she would control their relationship. After all, it was impossible for Han Lai to become her dual cultivation partner. But after following Han Lai these days, Wang Kaidai had enjoyed unprecedented high-end treatment. Everywhere she went, she was surrounded by people. Wang Kaidai was fascinated by the feeling of seeing all the mountains under her feet. It was as addictive as taking immortal herbs. At this moment, Wang Kaidai felt that it was worth it to follow Han Lai, even if it wouldn't last forever. Due to the no-fly zone, Han Lai and the other two could only land 300 meters away from the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. They had to walk 300 meters to reach the gate of the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. After walking for 200 meters, no one dared to make sound. Wang Kaidai couldn't wait to announce to all the female cultivators present that she was Han Lai's woman. Were they a bunch of unwanted withered flowers, envious? Just as Han Lai and Wang Kaidai were fantasizing, a voice slowly sounded. "You're a disgrace to the Han clan. Don't you know how to line up?" This sentence expressed the thoughts of all the contestants in the queue. All of them looked at the young man with approval and support. Han Lai stopped and looked towards the direction of the voice. He snorted coldly. He saw a young man sitting cross-legged not far away. "I was wondering who it was. So it's trash from the Ankuan Empire. Let's not talk here. In the entire Jiuquan Divine Realm, is there a place for a bunch of rats like you to talk? Du Ruo, did you not suffer enough during this time?" Han Lai immediately recognized this person. His eyes narrowed slightly. Li Daochong also knew the young man who spoke. It was Du Ruo who appeared a few months ago when they were dealing with the demonic Black Nightmare Vine. It was also Li Daochong who killed Ghoul and formed a grudge with the Talisman of Wonders, which led to the series of events that happened later. After that, Du Ruo was besieged by non-Kuan cultivators in the third capital. He could not stay there any longer and had to leave. Along the way, he hid and used an immortal-level flying treasure to avoid danger many times before arriving at the third capital. Du Ruo did not want to run away this time. He planned to cultivate in the Jiuquan Cultivation Tower for a while. A piece of trash who uses his brother's name to bully others. "How dare you talk nonsense to me?" Du Ruo said disdainfully. He looked at Han Lai with eyes full of contempt. "You're asking for it." Han Lai's weakness was exposed. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. As soon as he finished speaking, Shang Qinghai shot out like lightning and hit Du Ruo's chest with his palm. The latter was prepared. He was not strong enough. Du Ruo's strength was average. However, he was able to enter the top 10 of the Nam-Kuan top 10 because of his powerful divine telekinesis and terrifying calculation ability. He could take out dozens of the most advanced spiritual computers at any time. Before he spoke, Du Ruo had already calculated all the possibilities. Among them, the highest probability was that the follower behind Han Lai would attack him first. Bang! Shang Qinghai's palm hit the protective shield that Du Rual had already set up. Crack! Bang! A layer of spirit chi protective shield was shattered. Du Rual was sweating profusely. This protective shield was supported by a one-star defensive spirit array. It was shattered with a single palm. Han Lai's follower was indeed terrifying. If he had not prepared beforehand, he would have been sent to the respawn point by that palm. Cutting in line and hitting people. Are there any rules? A female cultivator could not stand it anymore and said, "Rules? In this Jioshuan realm of the gods." Han Lai sneered and raised his fist halfway. He continued, "Whoever has the bigger fist is the rule." Whoosh! Wang Kaidai was not to be outdone. She attacked with her sword. Clang! The female cultivator hurriedly blocked and retreated more than 10 steps. She glared at Wang Kaidai. B*TCH. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 843. Whoosh! A cold light flashed, and the female cultivator who had just cursed Wang Kaidai was cut in half by a sickle-shaped weapon. The female cultivator directly went to the resurrection point to report. Shang Chenghai stretched out his hand, and the sickle flew back into his hand. The handle was connected to a metal chain. Soul-reaping sickle. Shang Chenghai's natal magic treasure. The female cultivator had spoken rudely and was killed on the spot. The surrounding contestants were in an uproar, and many of them clenched their fists, not daring to say anything. Du Rual felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't think that Han Lai would dare to kill her even though he was in the wrong. Han Lai looked around and said coldly, "Who else has objections? Step forward. Everyone, let's attack together. Are you afraid we can't beat him?" A cultivator said angrily, "Yeah, there are so many of us. What's there to be afraid of? He's not Han Pa." Another person said, "Count me in." A fat cultivator with a wine gourd hanging from his waist slowly stood up. In an instant, dozens of relatively strong contestants responded and stood up from their cross-legged positions. One by one, they gathered around Du Rual, forming a barrier with her as the center. Do you think you'll be of any use just because you have more people?" Han Lai looked at the contestants with contempt. Although some of them had united, most of them chose to protect themselves, especially those who didn't have a strong background. They chose to remain silent. There were less than 100 people who stood up to resist. However, this kind of power was not to be underestimated. Shang Chenghai glanced at Han Lai, and the latter nodded slightly. A cruel light flashed through the former's eyes. Shang Chenghai's hand shook, and the sickle shot out like lightning. It didn't have a particularly powerful aura, only a silver light flashing through the air. Du Rual and the others didn't even have time to react before the dozen or so contestants who had stepped forward were cut in half and were sent to the resurrection point in the blink of an eye. Du Rual's hand continuously tapped on the spiritual computer keyboard, quickly calculating Shang Chenghai's attack path. Only then did she barely manage to dodge this attack. When the difference in strength was too great, pure numbers were meaningless. In an instant, the entire place fell silent. The dozens of contestants who had stepped forward felt their momentum disappear. Many of them began to regret trying to be heroes. Now that they were riding a tiger, they couldn't back down and had dug their own graves. Who would have thought that Han Lai's bodyguard would be so terrifyingly powerful? A smile blossomed on Han Lai's face as he looked at the frightened contestants, as if he was looking at ants. "I'm here today to rent a cultivation room. Does anyone have any objections?" Du Rual clenched his teeth. He had millions of thoughts in a second, and tens of thousands of possibilities were calculated in dozens of seconds. There was only one conclusion, which was to go to the resurrection point. Shang Chenghai's battle prowess was comparable to the top 5 or even the top 3 on the prodigy list. Even if all the contestants joined forces, they would still be no match for him. Ha ha ha, don't be stubborn. Scram. Han Lai laughed loudly. The remaining dozens of contestants standing behind Du Rual looked at each other. A few people stepped aside and returned to their original positions. Their faces were full of helplessness. With one person taking the lead, the others followed one after another. Soon, there was no one left behind Du Rual. Du Rual was the only one left standing there. Even in-guns contestants had left. Du Rual, you really have to go to the resurrection point to see the scenery, Han Lai said with a pitiful tone. Du Rual wanted to leave as well, but as one of in-gun's top 10 prodigies, if he left, he would not only represent himself, but also the ethereal brain and in-gun's reputation. There was no way out. Du Rual made up his mind. If that was the case, he would just go to the resurrection point. But before that, he would make Han Lai suffer. Du Rual moved his telekinesis. Dozens of spiritual brains flew out, and a shining golden steel puppet appeared out of nowhere. It was a steel puppet at the peak of the void refinement stage. Shang Qinghai's eyes twitched when he saw the steel puppet. Du Rual's hands turned into dancing fairies, jumping on top of the dozens of spiritual brains. Shadows could be seen, as if there were dozens of hands typing on the keyboard. The steel puppet's eyes shone brightly. It was about to be activated. Shang Qinghai was on full alert, ready to attack. Han Lai squinted his eyes. His hand moved slightly, and a long spear appeared in his hand. He could tell that the steel puppet was not ordinary. Wang Kaidai stood aside, ready to launch a sneak attack. Whoosh! Just when everyone's attention was on Du Rual and the others, a gust of wind blew past. A purple figure suddenly appeared. A young man in a purple robe appeared here. He took a step forward. His figure was like the wind, and he was already 100 meters away. In just 2 steps, he had already arrived beside Du Rual and the others. The young man in a purple robe turned a blind eye to them and continued to walk forward. However, from the 3rd step onwards, he no longer used his movement technique. It was as if he was taking a stroll toward the Jiushuan cultivation tower. As for everything that happened at the moment, the young man in a purple robe seemed to have not seen it. His eyes were fixed on the gate of the Jiushuan cultivation tower. It was as if nothing else existed. The person who came was none other than Li Daocheng, who had rushed to the Jiushuan cultivation tower after getting the news from Wei Yuliang. Mu Wanrong and Xiaoying also landed from the sky at this moment. However, the 2 women did not move forward. They just stood outside the no-fly zone and waited. Li Daocheng's sudden arrival interrupted the battle between Du Rual, Han Lai, and the others. For some reason, time seemed to have frozen for a moment. In everyone's eyes, this young man in a purple robe was nothing special. His aura was not strong, nor was there any pressure. He was harmless to humans and animals. However, his appearance forcibly interrupted the battle between Du Rual and the others. Du Rual, Han Lai, and the others seemed to have been stopped by some invisible force. They all looked at the young man in a purple robe. However, the person who started it all did nothing. Li Daocheng. Wang Kaidai only regained her senses when a young man in a purple robe walked past her. She recognized that he was Li Daocheng. This cry caused the others to be stunned for a moment. Li Daocheng was a name that everyone in the divine realm of Jiushuan knew. The 10,000 Wonders Talisman had put a high bounty on his head. The reason why the participants from the Inkuan Empire were being attacked was because Li Daocheng had used despicable means to kill Ngu of the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. What? Li Daocheng? Han Lai looked at Wang Kaidai in surprise. Yes, he's Li Daocheng. I would recognize him even if he turned into ashes. When I first entered the Jiushuan Divine Realm, he was the one who ruined my plans. Wang Kaidai gritted her teeth. Du Rual also recognized Li Daocheng. Her gaze was complicated. Du Rual could not accept the strength this guy had displayed when he was fighting the demonic Black Nightmare Vine. Stop right there. Han Lai shouted. How could Han Lai let such a big fish walk into his trap? As long as he killed Li Daocheng, he would be able to obtain the huge amount of cultivation resources provided by the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. That was a huge fortune, enough to make an ordinary cultivator become a new genius. Even a young master like Han Lai, who never had to worry about cultivation resources, was tempted. This was because the bounty included an immortal-level magic treasure and a great ability. Although he did not know why the 10,000 Wonders Talisman was so generous, these things were enough to make all the young cultivators in the spirit world go crazy. Li Daocheng ignored him and continued to walk towards the Jiushuan cultivation pagoda. Oomph. Han Lai snorted coldly. He was furious at the purple shirt youth's actions. The long spear in Han Lai's hand gathered spiritual light, and with a bang, it burst open, and a spear light shot out. A spear light shot out towards Li Daocheng's back. Wherever the spear light passed, a deep pit was blasted open on the ground. It was dozens of meters deep, and its power was extremely fierce. Han Lai himself was not weak. He was ranked 15th on the Qiansong Heaven's Pride ranking. He was not as stunning as Han Pe, but he was still a talented young cultivator. At the early Void Refinement realm, Han Lai relied on his own strength to look down on the Jiuquan Divine realm. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Wang Kaidai was delighted. This bastard was finally finished. After going to the revival point, he could forget about coming out. Pooh! The terrifying spear light hit Li Daocheng's back. However, the scene that he had imagined did not happen. This spear light that seemed capable of slaughtering everything. The moment it hit Li Daocheng, it was as if a stream of air had hit a wall and disappeared. What? Han Lai was filled with disbelief. Shang Qinghai's expression changed. He had protected Han Lai for dozens of years, and he was extremely clear about Han Lai's strength. Even Shang Qinghai didn't dare to take the full blow head-on. Li Daocheng finally stopped and turned around. He looked at Han Lai and said expressionlessly, "You are asking for death." Han Lai had never been treated like this before. Moreover, it was done in front of so many people. This was an insult to his dignity. Ha ha ha, bastard. Do you know who you were talking to? I am asking for death. Let's see who is asking for death. Han Lai laughed like he had heard the biggest joke of the century. Li Daocheng raised his right hand and extended a finger. It streaked through the air. Zong! A fine purple light flashed through the air. "Young master, be careful!" Shang Qinghai shouted, and the hairs on his body stood on end as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. Dang! Bang! Boom! The soul-reaping scythe was sent flying. Shang Qinghai used all his strength to block Li Daocheng's casual attack. Shang Qinghai retreated more than 10 steps before stopping. His chest was in turmoil, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Li Daocheng's face was filled with surprise. There was actually someone who could block his 9-split saber technique unscathed. "You are very powerful. If you scram now, I won't kill you," Li Daocheng said indifferently. He then turned around and continued to walk towards the tower gate. Wang Kaidai, who thought Li Daocheng was dead for sure, stared at the purple figure with her mouth wide open. She was rooted to the spot. Wang Kaidai was very clear about Shang Qinghai's strength. She had never seen anyone who could withstand a single attack from Shang Qinghai. Li Daocheng had repelled Shang Qinghai with a single finger. How is that possible? Wang Kaidai had fought with Li Daocheng before. She knew he was strong, but how could he be this powerful? What arrogance! Even though Shang Qinghai was shocked by the purple-clothed youth's terrifying strength, he still refused to admit defeat. "Scram while I'm still in a good mood," Li Daocheng said as he walked. "Grandmaster Shang, kill him." Han Lai was infuriated. "Yes, young Master Han," Shang Qinghai replied. However, before he could make a move, exclamations came from all around. Heavens! Is he crazy? Before the exclamations could be heard, Li Daocheng had already turned into a purple light and rushed towards the tower gate. He was going to force his way in. Shang Qinghai was about to chase after him when Han Lai stopped him. "Wait. If he wants to die, let him. The Jiuquan guards will chop him into mincemeat." Chapter 844. The Jiuquan guards were the guardians of the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. Any contestant who tried to barge into the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda would be punished. No one was allowed to enter within 10 meters of the pagoda without permission. As soon as Li Daocheng entered the forbidden area, white light shot out from the eyes of the 4 pagoda guards. The 4 pagoda guards held the Jiuquan Spirit Spear in their hands. It was a top-grade, heaven-grade weapon refined under the laws of the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. Ordinary weapons would be suppressed by the Jiuquan Spirit Spear. If there was a weapon spirit, it would be imprisoned by the power of the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda once it came into contact with the weapon. In the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda, the power of the Jiuquan Divine Weapon would be maximized. It would have an absolute suppression effect on weapons in the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. The strength of a Jiuquan guard was comparable to a late-stage Void Refinement Cultivator and the combat power of an early-stage Body Integration Cultivator. The 4 Jiuquan guards formed a 4-spell battle formation and could fight a late-stage Body Integration Cultivator. In other words, among the young cultivators participating in this competition, there would not be more than 10 people who could break through the 9 black guards. Even Shang Qinghai, who was next to Han Lai, did not have the ability to do so. They had only cut the line just now. They did not dare to barge into the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. Everyone looked at Li Daochong as if he was an idiot. What was the difference between this and courting death? They were afraid that even the 3 monstrous geniuses would not do such a thing. If you want to go to the resurrection point, you might as well slit your own throat. If you barge into the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda and get captured by the Jiuquan guards, you will have to suffer the pain of the Jiuquan Cultivation Pagoda. At the very least, you will be imprisoned under the Jiuquan Glacier and suffer the pain of being frozen for 3 months. Why bother? A contestant shook his head regretfully. At this time, the 4 Jiuquan guards had already surrounded Li Daochong. Their mission was to protect the rules of the Jiuquan Cultivation Tower. No one was allowed to enter without permission. If they wanted to enter, they had to pay their battle merits. Otherwise, no one is allowed to enter. The 9 mystical guards were equivalent to high-grade steel puppets. If they said they would attack without any superfluous words. The 4-spell battle formation had both offensive and defensive capabilities. Once it was activated, it would not stop. It would either capture the intruder or the 4 Jiuquan guards would die in battle. Li Daochong's eyes flashed, his expression serious. The Jiuquan law undulations coming from the Jiuquan guards made him fearful. Li Daochong didn't dare to be careless. He already had the purple profound saber in his hand. Fighting against the guards created by the spiritual venerables would definitely not be easy. Swoosh! 2 sharp beams of green light pierced over. Li Daochong's figure flickered as he dodged the attack. Before he could steady himself, he felt a chill behind him. Clang! He swung the purple profound saber back and blocked the spear attack from behind. The 4th spear attack came from bottom to top, aiming at Li Daochong's chest. It was extremely fast and from a tricky angle. The 4-9 profound guards did not use any fancy moves, nor did they use any earth-shattering divine abilities. They were all very simple basic spear techniques. They seemed ordinary, but they were actually profound. This kind of pure combat had the greatest lethality when used against a single target. Magical powers with a large range of destructive power were obviously not necessary against a single target. Clang, 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 bang, boom, clang, clang. Under everyone's gaze, a purple shadow intertwined with 4 white shadows in the forbidden area of the tower gate. No one could see the movements of the 2 sides clearly. They could only see the purple shadow and the white shadow. So fast. The guy can actually keep up with the Jiuquan guards. Someone exclaimed. He's just holding on. He instantly unleashed all his strength and used his magical powers. The 4-spell formation is comparable to a late-stage body integration stage old demon. That kid is dead for sure. Someone added, I dare to bet that he won't last more than 20 seconds. A contestant crossed his arms in front of his chest as if he was waiting for a good show. 20 seconds? Brother, you think too highly of that guy. Even if he has the strength of the top 10 prodigies, he'll be amazing if he can last 20 seconds. I bet that he won't last 10 seconds. Someone next to him immediately refuted. Although the others didn't say anything, their expressions showed that they agreed with what the 2 said. Han Lai's lips curled up slightly. He had seen idiots before, but he had never seen such an idiot. Wang Kaidai gloated and said, I'm afraid that guy's brain is flooded with water. But that's good. It saves us the trouble of fighting. Shang Qinghai was silent. Light flashed in his eyes, and there was a hint of surprise. The purple-robed young man had repelled him with a single attack. This alone was enough to show how powerful he was. Shang Qinghai hadn't met a worthy opponent since he entered the Jiuquan realm. The purple-robed young man was the first. Several seconds passed. The 5 figures in the forbidden area were still flickering. As time passed, the contestants watching from outside the forbidden area became more and more surprised. 10 seconds passed quickly. Of the 2 people who had just spoken, the contestant who said that he wouldn't last 10 seconds felt his face heat up. He had been slapped in the face. The other contestant who said that he would last 20 seconds couldn't help but smile victoriously. However, 20 seconds passed quickly as well. The dancing purple figure in the forbidden area showed no signs of stopping. The other 4 figures continued to attack it, but they were still unable to harm it. The 2 contestants who thought that they had superior judgment didn't really slap them, but their faces were burning. They curled up slightly, afraid that someone would notice them. More and more contestants were watching with their mouths agape. Ow, how is this possible? How can someone be in a deadlock with a Jiuquan guardian for so long? Someone stuttered in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Han Lai's smug and sinister smile froze on his face. He knew better than anyone the strength of a Jiuquan guardian. This was because 5 months ago, his brother, the #1 prodigy of the Qiansong Empire, Han Pe, had fought with a Jiuquan guardian. Of course, Han Pe didn't barge into the Jiuquan cultivation tower. Instead, he spent 100,000 battle points to duplicate a Jiuquan guardian in the Jiuquan cultivation tower's cultivation room and used it as a sparring partner. Although Han Pe defeated the Jiuquan guardian cleanly, it wasn't to the point where he could crush it completely. Han Pe had a high evaluation of the Jiuquan guardian's strength. Just one of them was enough to enter the top 10 of the prodigy ranking. Li Daochong was actually in a deadlock with 4 Jiuquan guardians for so long. Han Lai's eyes twitched. Li Daochong's strength was far beyond his imagination. The shock in Shang Qinghai's eyes was even more intense than Han Lai's. Ever since he entered the Jiuquan divine world, he didn't put anyone else in his eyes except for the 3 monstrous geniuses. Only now did Shang Qinghai realize that he had underestimated the potential of the human domain's spiritual world's young cultivators. Wang Katie's body trembled. Even if she didn't have good eyesight, she could still see Li Daochong's terrifying strength. She thought that she could sit back and relax after climbing a big tree like Han Lai. She was an invincible existence in the Jiuquan divine world. Anyone who provoked her would be courting death. However, this thought was completely overturned. The faster the purple light in the forbidden area pulsed, the more Wang Katie's heart jumped. Within the forbidden area, Li Daochong's speed was getting faster and faster. The 4-spell battle formation was airtight and could take down any target it locked onto. However, the 4-spell battle formation was in danger under Li Daochong's attacks. The 4 Jiuquan guardians were overwhelmed. Li Daochong let out a soft cry and activated the 1,000-sound escape technique. At such a short distance, he was already as fast as lightning. Pa 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 whoosh bang! Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Saber light and sword shadows flashed. Boom! A Jiuquan guardian was blasted out of the forbidden area and flew over 100 meters away. He landed on the ground with a clang, and his metal armor scattered all over the ground. Soon it disappeared. Immediately afterward, 2 more Jiuquan guardians were blasted out of the forbidden area and shattered upon landing. At this moment, the purple light in the forbidden area stopped. The final Jiuquan guardian was lifted into the air by Li Daochong. He exerted force with his hand and shattered with a bang. Everyone outside the forbidden zone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Time seemed to have stopped, and space seemed to have frozen. The entire area was deathly silent. Han Lai swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Shang Qinghai's eyes widened, and Wang Katie's legs went weak. She was afraid that Li Daochong would discover her. Du Ruo, who had always been calm, actually stopped using his divine sense and stared at Li Daochong in a daze. What kind of monster was this? Other than Mo Chensi, and Gun had another monster? Li Daochong. Du Ruo was momentarily dazed. He raised his hand and touched his chin as he muttered to himself. No matter how he searched for information, the information he obtained was very limited. I've never heard of him. Where did he come from? After taking care of the 4 Jiushuan guardians, Li Daochong glanced at Mu Wanrong and Xiaoying, who were watching from a distance. The 2 girls understood tacitly and flew over with a single step. Just you wait, Li Daochong said indifferently. Then he transformed into a purple bolt of lightning and shot into the 9 Mysteries Cultivation Pagoda. In just a few seconds, the 5th floor of the Jiushuan Cultivation Tower flashed, and a purple shadow flew down. Li Daochong returned with a confused young cultivator in his hand. He asked Mu Wanrong directly, "Is it him?" Mu Wanrong nodded slightly. "That's right. That long saber fell from him." "Who are you people? Do you know who I am? Let me go, The young cultivator who was dragged out struggled and shouted. He tried to resist, but the spirit energy in his body seemed to be sealed and could not be used at all. He stopped abruptly before he could finish his sentence. After Li Daochong confirmed it, he directly searched his soul. In just a few seconds, Li Daochong's expression changed. His eyes were spitting fire, and he could no longer control his aura, shooting straight into the sky like a volcano erupting. "Master, is Sister Silver Bottle in danger?" Xiaoying felt that something was wrong and could not help but ask. Chapter 845. Li Daochong raised his head and looked in the direction of the 2nd imperial capital. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He still didn't know where the silver bottle was. But through the soul search, he roughly knew that the silver bottle was in the 2nd imperial capital. The silver moonblade was bought from the market by this person, and Li Daochong knew the person who sold the silver moonblade. Pan Jialuo. Li Daochong coldly uttered these 3 words. Boom! Li Daochong soared into the sky like a cannonball. The air on the ground exploded, and the cultivators present couldn't stand steadily. Li Daochong only sent a message to Xiaoying. "You can enter the Jiushuan Cultivation Pagoda to cultivate." As his voice fell, Li Daochong had already turned into a purple light and disappeared into the horizon. Li Daochong's anger almost ignited the horizon. He activated the 1,000 sound escape technique to its maximum speed. Along the way, Li Daochong used the 1,000 sound escape technique to its maximum speed. Even if his spiritual qi was exhausted, he didn't care. Under the extreme speed, the consumption was huge. Every half an hour, Li Daochong had to rest for a few hours and take a large amount of recovery spiritual medicine before he could continue on his way. However, the 1,000 sound escape technique's half-hour journey was extremely terrifying. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to achieve this even if they flew at full speed for a few days and nights. Just like this, Li Daochong flew with anger. In less than 10 days, he had already arrived near the 2nd imperial capital. Li Daochong could feel that he was finally close to the silver bottle. Although he didn't know the exact location, his intuition told him that it wasn't too far away. Li Daochong didn't let his anger get to his head. The consumption of flying was too great. After getting close to the 2nd imperial capital, Li Daochong found a secluded place and set up a restriction. He immediately entered a meditative state and began to adjust his breathing. After adjusting his state to the best, it was time to start a massacre. Demon Flame Mountain Range. It was the largest hunting ground in the 2nd imperial capital. The entire Demon Flame Mountain Range was vast and boundless. It was even larger than the largest planet Li Daochong had ever come across, Black Jupiter. In the Demon Flame Mountain Range, as the first round of testing was coming to an end, all kinds of high-level Demon General level and even Demon King level Jiushuan netherworld creatures would appear every moment. 2/3 of the contestants from Imperial Capital Number 2 hunted here to obtain battle merits. But even then, the Demon Flame Mountain Range still seemed to be sparsely populated because it was too vast. Tens of billions of people poured into it, and very soon it was so diluted that it could not be found. Deep within the Demon Flame Mountain Range, within a mountain, Silver Bottle had been imprisoned here for 11 months. Ever since she entered the Jiushuan Divine Realm, she had never seen the sunlight of the Jiushuan Divine Realm. Over the past 11 months, The silver bottle had been imprisoned in the ceiling spirit array and had been in a semi-conscious state most of the time. While he was awake, Silver Bottle kept observing the structure of the entire cave and the weakness of the spirit array. A month ago, Silver Bottle finally found a way to break the spirit array. But just breaking the spirit array was not enough to escape. Yihong had been guarding outside the spirit array. This guy had very strong willpower. For such a long time, he had always been in a meditative state, cultivating peacefully while guarding the spirit array. Pan Jalawal would go out every few days and would only return after a few days. Every time he returned, he would bring Yihong a lot of cultivation resources and some news of the outside world. Silver Bottle knew that the time for these two guys to bring her out to threaten Li Daochong was almost up. As time passed, Silver Bottle became more and more anxious. She did not want to become Li Daochong's burden. On this day, Pan Jalawal returned after 5 days. But this time, Pan Jalawal looked flustered. He rushed into the cave and immediately said, "Brother Yi, quick, we have to leave here quickly." Yihong slowly opened his eyes and asked in confusion, "Brother Pan, why are you so flustered?" Pan Jalawal's face was covered in dirt, and the two men of sacrifice who had been following behind him were nowhere to be found. Pan Jalawal said anxiously, "We have 8 lifetimes of bad luck. A Blood King beast has appeared in our area. It is rumored that it has great battle achievements and experts are rushing here. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to." Yihong slowly opened eyes suddenly. "Blood King beast? What does that have to do with us?" "Brother Yi, as long as the Blood King beast has enough nourishment, it can breed blood beasts without limit. You and I might not be a match for a blood beast. Just now, my 2 men of sacrifice were killed by a blood beast in order to cover me and were sent to the resurrection point. Now, there are blood beasts everywhere outside. If we don't leave now, we will have to go to the resurrection point," Pan Jalawal said in one breath. As soon as he finished speaking, boom, a loud noise came from outside. The cave shook violently in the loud noise, as if there was an earthquake. Ferocious web-like cracks appeared on the cave walls, and it seemed that this place could collapse at any time. Yihong sensed that something was wrong. He immediately stood up and put away the spirit formation that was imprisoning the silver bottle. He grabbed the bottle and said, "Take this girl to Imperial Capital number 2. It's about time to ask that brat Li Daochong for his battle achievements." Pan Jalawal wanted to wait a few more days, but he couldn't wait any longer. The two of them held the silver bottle and slipped out of a small door at the back of the cave. Behind the door was a long and narrow passage that extended to the top of the mountain. Not long after they left, the cave collapsed in the shaking. Pan Jalawal was in front, and Yihong was behind him with the silver bottle. The 3 of them rushed out of the passage and saw the light again. The entrance of the passage was among the rocks at the top of this mountain. As soon as they came out, Pan Jalawal flew up and was about to fly at full speed. However, just as he started, he staggered and almost fell flat on his face. Yihong was puzzled, but when he saw a group of contestants floating in the air diagonally above him, he shrank his head and wished he could drill into the ground. A young cultivator holding a grayish-silver spear was facing off against a huge human-shaped bat. The reason why Yihong and Pan Jalawal were so shocked was because the spear in the hands of the youth in the air was the universe spear that shocked the human region. The owner of the universe spear was Qian Song's #1 prodigy, Han Pe. That human-shaped bat was a Blood King beast, one of the 12 great demon king beasts of the Hades. In a mountain range below, thousands of blood beasts rushed to roar at the contestants in the air with ferocious expressions. This mountain range was already flooded with blood beasts. Pan Jalawal and Yihong looked at each other and swallowed their saliva with difficulty. There was no one just now. How did they all come here in such a short time? Pan Jalawal was depressed. Why is Yuqingha here too? Yihong was surprised. Pan Jalawal was stunned for a moment. Only then did he realize that not far from Han Pe, there was a scholarly youth in white robes with his hands behind his back. He was in perfect harmony with his surroundings and didn't use any divine ability. However, if one didn't pay close attention, they would completely miss him. The scholarly youth was the #1 prodigy of the Jade, clear Great Void Republic, Yu Qinghe. It was obviously not normal for two prodigies to gather together. Pan Jialuo had been chased by a blood beast and was already in a daze. How could he care about the situation around him? So many people had appeared, but he didn't sense them at all. If he didn't see them with his own eyes, he would have thought that he didn't sense them at all. This level of battle wasn't something that Pan Jialuo and Yi Hong could participate in. They knew very well what they were capable of. Yi Hong only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. No longer hiding anything, he took out an invisibility magic treasure. It was an ancient, immortal-level magic treasure passed down by the ancestors of the Yi family. Pan Jialuo, who was worrying about how to escape, saw the invisibility cloak Yi Hong took out. His eyes lit up. The Thousand Shadows invisibility cloak made from the black tortoise's eye membrane. Yi Hong smiled. Brother Pan, you're quite knowledgeable. That's right. Pan Jialuo's heart immediately sank. He felt much better. Brother Yi, why didn't you take out such a good treasure earlier? You made me worry for nothing. Yi Hong pursed his lips. How can I take out such a treasure so casually? I won't use it unless I have no other choice. This is a life-saving treasure. Pan Jialuo chuckled. Brother Yi, you're right. Then let's not delay any longer and leave quickly. Yi Hong covered the three of them with the cloak. Then, the three of them disappeared into the surroundings. The Thousand Shadows invisibility cloak could temporarily block the eyes of immortals. Even monsters like Yu Qinghe and Han couldn't sense it. However, with Yi Hong's cultivation, he couldn't hold on for too long. 3 to 5 minutes was already his limit. Although it wasn't long, it was enough for him and Pan Jialuo to escape tens of kilometers away with the silver bottle. Yi Hong took off the cloak and let out a long sigh. Phew, Brother Pan, we're almost there. This treasure is good, but it consumes a lot of spirit qi. It can't be used for long. Pan Jialuo looked around and used his divine will to check. He smiled and said, Brother Yi, we're already out of the danger zone. That's enough. Bang, bang. While the two of them were talking, 2 beams of light suddenly attacked the two of them. Yi Hong had expended a lot of energy and was pushed back more than 10 steps. Pan Jialuo slapped the light away. While the two of them weren't paying attention, Silver Bottle attacked with all her might and escaped into the forest. Bitch, trying to run? Pan Jialuo shouted and chased after her. Silver Bottle had been imprisoned for too long, and her body was exhausted. She couldn't be fast at all. Pan Jialuo caught up with her after a few dozen meters. All the items on Silver Bottle's body had been taken by Pan Jialuo. She was unarmed and didn't have any usable weapons. However, Silver Bottle didn't want to be captured. Seeing that she was about to be caught by Pan Jialuo, she turned around and attacked with all her might. This attack contained some power of loss. It was a superior divine ability that Li Daochong had taught her. The third stage of the Jade Maiden Universal Art, Jade Maiden Heaven Sealing Palm. Seeing that Silver Bottle still dared to resist, Pan Jialuo sneered. Contempt flashed in his eyes as he attacked with his palm. Bang! The two palms collided. PFFF, Silver Bottle spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Pan Jialuo took more than 10 steps back. His chest was in turmoil and his head was buzzing. He almost fell to the ground. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that a mere spirit-severing stage card slave girl would have such power. Yi Hong was stunned. What Silver Bottle used just now wasn't a cultivation technique, but a divine ability. Since when did Kanu have such a heaven-defying talent? Pan Jialuo gritted his teeth and swallowed a healing pill. He slowed down his breathing and then flew towards Silver Bottle. Silver Bottle's body was too weak, and she was severely injured. Even if she was in her best condition, she wouldn't be Pan Jialuo's opponent, let alone now. Seeing that she couldn't escape, Silver Bottle's face darkened. Instead of being caught again, she might as well explode her primordial spirit and go to the resurrection point. Pan Jialuo was extremely fast. Before Silver Bottle could do anything, he had already arrived in front of her. Just as Pan Jialuo reached out to grab Silver Bottle, his body suddenly froze. Silver Bottle, who was about to explode, felt a big hand behind her back and a warm current flowed into her body. Chapter 846. Silver Bottle's beautiful eyes flashed, and the void in her body was soon filled with a warm current. Her serious internal injuries recovered at an astonishing speed. Young master. With a soft call, Silver Bottle's eyes were instantly shrouded in mist. The grievances of 11 months of imprisonment were released in this soft call. Since Li Daocheng arrived at the Second Imperial Capital, he had sent out dozens of divine souls to search for traces of Silver Bottle. As long as Silver Bottle appeared, she would be immediately sensed. A few days passed, and Li Daocheng still couldn't find any trace of Silver Bottle. He couldn't help but feel anxious. Just as Li Daocheng was about to use other methods to search, Silver Bottle's aura suddenly appeared. At that moment, Li Daocheng turned into a purple arc and shot up. The distance of thousands of kilometers was covered in a few minutes. Pan Jialuo stared with wide eyes at Li Daocheng, who appeared behind Silver Bottle, as if he had teleported. As if he had seen a ghost, Pan Jialuo reflexively retreated. Li Daocheng's eyes were cold and murderous, but he didn't immediately make a move. With Li Daocheng's current strength, Silver Bottle's serious injuries were quickly healed. When Silver Bottle was completely healed, Li Daocheng moved his hand away from behind his back and said, "I've made you suffer during this time. It's all my fault." Silver Bottle shook her head and said, "Young master, please don't say that. I was imprisoned because I wasn't strong enough." Li Daocheng looked at Silver Bottle lovingly and reached out to play with the girl's hair by her ear. "It's really my fault this time. I didn't get rid of the ants, so you were bitten. If I did, this wouldn't have happened." Silver Bottle fiddled with her small hands. When facing the young master, her heart would always be disappointed and run around. "You still have time to flirt at this time. Li Daocheng seems to have a lot of free time. It seems you really don't know anything. Do you think everything will be fine after saving that card slave?" Pan Jialuo said with a gloomy smile. Li Daocheng acted as if he didn't hear anything. His mind power moved, and an invisible spiritual sense instantly enveloped Pan Jialuo. If not for the fact that Pan Jialuo was wearing a robe that was specifically designed to defend against spiritual will, he would have lost half of his life. Pan Jialuo's face twitched. He didn't expect Li Daocheng to attack without even saying a word. "Li Daocheng, if you move again, I will make that card slave disappear forever," Pan Jialuo said fiercely. Li Daocheng's expression changed slightly. When he was treating the Silver Bottle, he had already examined her body and found nothing out of the ordinary. "You don't have to waste your time probing with your divine sense anymore. I placed a level 18-time explosion talisman on your bitch's body. The detonator of that talisman is connected to my primordial spirit. As long as I die, your bitch won't be able to live either. Of course I won't die. As long as I want to, I can take your bitch's life at any time." Li Daocheng's eyes narrowed. He couldn't help but feel a little annoyed at himself for being soft-hearted back then. No matter whether what Pan Jialuo said was true or false, Li Daocheng didn't dare to act rashly. A few seconds of silence. Li Daocheng slowly opened his mouth. "Say it. What do you want?" Yi Hong, who was standing at the side, didn't really believe what Pan Jialuo said at first. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he had no choice but to believe it. Yi Hong couldn't understand why Li Daocheng would value such an insignificant card slave servant by his side so much. To this young Master Yi, who grew up in a rich family, this was something that he couldn't understand. Card slaves were no different from household items. They were all private property. There was actually someone who cared so much. Pan Jialuo grinned. "Li Daocheng, you're a smart person. In this Jiushuan God realm, you still don't know what you want? So you want battle merits?" Li Daocheng said indifferently. "Hee hee, do you still need to ask?" Pan Jialuo laughed sinisterly. "How much do you want?" "I want as much as you have. Your appetite is quite big. Do you think it's too big? You can choose not to give it. After all, this competition is very important. Losing your qualification for a lowly servant isn't worth it. If I were you, I wouldn't care about that lowly servant." "Pa!" Just as Pan Gelois finished speaking, an invisible hand slapped his face, causing him to spin 3 times. Half of his face instantly swelled up like a pig's head. You dare to hit me? Pan Gelois stared at Li Daochong. That's right. I'll hit you. Li Daochong stood with his hands behind his back. He didn't make a move. Good, very good. I'll send that lowly servant to meet the king of hell right now. Pan Gelois said good several times. His eyes flashed fiercely. If you can break through the restrictions of the Jiuquan divine light, you won't need to ask me for contribution points. Li Daochong didn't care about the threat at all. He looked at Pan Gelois as if he was looking at an idiot. Even if I can't activate the time explosion talisman now, that lowly servant will die once I leave the Jiuquan divine realm. Pan Gelois was flustered and exasperated after being exposed. Do you think you still have a chance to leave? Li Daochong narrowed his eyes and said, Ha ha, Li Daochong, even if you're bluffing, you should say something more reasonable. Do you think you have the ability to break through the restrictions of the Jiuquan laws? Pan Gelois raised his head and laughed. Ha! Another slap landed on Pan Gelois' face. Both sides of his face were slapped. This time, it was symmetrical. One had a complete pig's head, while the other weighed more than 400 jin. Pan Gelois grimaced in pain. His face was burning hot. Even his Yuan spirit was slapped. The pain from his soul was even more painful than being burned by fire. Yihong didn't say anything, as if he didn't exist. However, he was calculating the direction of the situation. The development of the situation was completely different from what Pan Gelois had said. Li Daochong didn't play his cards according to the plan. Yihong thought that Li Daochong cared a lot about the card slave, but he couldn't figure it out. Now, Li Daochong's state clearly showed that he didn't care about the card slave's life or death. This was in line with the normal logic. Who would give up precious contribution points for a mere card slave? Yihong estimated Li Daochong's true cultivation and felt that he wasn't his opponent. It didn't matter if the transaction failed. The key was that he didn't have enough contribution points. He wasted 11 months in vain. It was all his fault for listening to that idiot Pan Gelois' nonsense. Fortunately, he had plundered a lot of treasures from the card slave. With the help of these treasures, 1 month was enough to obtain enough contribution points. Thinking about it, Yihong quietly retreated. His aura almost disappeared. He was waiting for the best time to slip away. Pan Gelois was slapped twice. He was dizzy and couldn't stand steadily. Although he was in the Jiuquan divine world and his body wouldn't be harmed, he felt the same as in the outside world. The pain was even more intense. Pan Gelois' eyes were red, almost spitting fire. He never dreamed that Li Daochong not only didn't feel threatened, but also dared to slap him. Li Daochong, if you touch me again, I'll let that bitch die without a burial place. Pan Gelois covered his face and roared. Ha! Pan Gelois' reply was an even heavier slap. He was sent flying in the air, spinning more than 10 times in the air before crashing to the ground with a bang, creating a large crater in the ground. Yihong saw this and ran away. Stop, Li Daochong coldly said. Yihong's body stiffened and couldn't move. It was as if he was tied up by an invisible rope. Li Daochong, you and I have no enmity. This matter has nothing to do with me. It's the one surnamed Pan who asked me for help. Let me go. If you need help in the future, let me know. This you will definitely do my best to help, Yihong said seriously. Do I need your help? Li Daochong said disdainfully. Yihong was stunned. He still wanted to say something. But before he opened his mouth, an ice blade shot over. Li Daochong couldn't be bothered to say anything. The absolute cold ice divine formula casually fired out a divine ability. Yihong was shocked. In a hurry, he mobilized all the spiritual energy in his body. Swoosh! 2 spirit talismans whizzed out. These spirit talismans were snatched from Yinping. It was fine if he didn't use these spirit talismans. When Li Daochong saw that he actually used the spirit talismans he made to hit him, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. These 2 spirit talismans were both level 18 spirit talismans. The power was naturally incomparably terrifying. Li Daochong raised a hand. An ice mountain pressed down horizontally. Boom, boom. Two earth-shaking sounds. The two spirit talismans and the ice mountain canceled each other out. That ice blade was destroyed by one of the spirit talismans. This. Yihong sucked in a cold breath. Two level 18 spirit talismans were blocked by Li Daocheng so casually just like that. Preserving his life was more important. Yihong gritted his teeth and took out that level 21 spirit talisman. A sinister look flashed across his eyes as he thought to himself, let's see how you block it now. Yihong was about to shoot out the spirit talisman, but just as he raised his hands, they froze in place. His entire person was assaulted by a terrifying cold air. In just a blink of an eye, he was frozen into an ice sculpture. Swoosh! A ray of light shot over. Voila! The ice sculpture shattered. Yihong went to the resurrection point. Half of the items on him dropped. The battle merits that weren't much in the first place also decreased by half. Li Daocheng waved his hand and collected all the items that Yihong dropped. The more he looked, the angrier he got. Most of the items that Yihong dropped were actually Silver Bottle. Li Daocheng gave all these items to Silver Bottle. At the same time, he also returned the Silver Moon Blade to her. Pan Jialua had just stood up from the pit when he saw Yihong killed. His heart trembled. He knew that his meticulous plan had failed. He couldn't help but make up his mind. Since that was the case, he might as well fight to the death. Li Daocheng, you win. If I can't live, I'll drag that lowly servant of yours down with me. As he spoke, Pan Jialua activated his divine sense. He was about to detonate the time explosion talisman on Silver Bottle's body. However, nothing happened. If Silver Bottle's body was destroyed, then her origin soul in the Jiuquan God realm would also cease to exist. More than 10 seconds passed. Silver Bottle was still standing by Li Daocheng's side. Li Daocheng only found it funny. Under the control of a Jiuquan spirit sage, unless one's strength surpassed that of a Jiuquan spirit sage. Otherwise, there was nothing one could do. Only when one's body left the Jiuquan spirit sage's envelopment could one break free from the control of the Jiuquan spirit sage and Jiuquan laws. How could a mere Pan Jialua break free from the Jiuquan laws? Li Daocheng was not threatened by Pan Jialua because he knew this. Ever since he saw the Jiuquan spirit sage, Li Daocheng knew how powerful a spirit sage was. Only now did Pan Jialua realize that he had overlooked the most important part. The Jiuquan laws were not something he could control. Damn it, Pan Jialua cursed. He suddenly raised his hand. In his hand was a spirit magnetic gun. This gun was the one Li Daocheng used to kill the Demon King on Blackwood Star. After the competition, Li Daocheng gave this gun to Silver Bottle for her to defend herself. The power of this gun was enough to kill body integration stage cultivators and low-level Demon Kings. Pan Jialua pulled the trigger. However, his finger did not seem to belong to him. No matter how hard he tried, he could not pull the trigger. Li Daocheng appeared in front of him. He slowly reached out and took the gun from Pan Jialua's hand. Pan Jialua, how can an ant know the power of Swan? You don't even have the qualifications to be my enemy. Li Daocheng raised the gun and pressed it against Pan Jialua's head. Wonderful book house. Chapter 847. Pan Jialua's face twitched as he looked at Li Daocheng in fear. Things were not going as he had planned. Li Daocheng had comprehended some of the mysteries of Jiuquan's laws a few months ago. Although it was very simple, it was more than enough to imprison Pan Jialua in the Jiuquan realm of the Jiuquan. In fact, Li Daocheng had 1,000 ways to deal with the time explosion talisman that Pan Jialua had placed on Yinping. But the simplest way was to imprison Pan Jialua here forever, never to be reincarnated. That was 100 times more vicious than killing him. Li Daocheng's divine will turned into an invisible whirlpool and was about to attack Pan Jialua. Just then, a loud sound came from afar. Boom! The earth shook. While the conflict was happening here, Han Pe and Yu Qinghe were fighting a fierce battle with the Blood King beast dozens of kilometers away. The Blood King beast was a top-level nether demon in the Hades, and its strength was comparable to a normal demon king. But the Blood King beast that appeared in the Joshuan realm of the gods was much stronger than the outside world. The two heavenly prodigies couldn't do anything to it. The blood race was a very special existence in Hades. They were neither dead nor alive. They were between life and death, and lived under the restrictions of another law. However, their characteristics were still more inclined towards the undead. The Blood King beast looked like a human, but it was bigger. It had a pair of huge bat wings on its back. Its skin was grayish-brown like dead wood. Its claws were like hooks, and its eyes were blood red. Only its face was similar to a human's. Regardless of its gender, it was beautiful and seductive, similar to the snake Medusa. The Blood King beast didn't know any nether arts, but it had an undying body. No matter how it was attacked, it couldn't be destroyed. It only had one weakness, the Blood Demon Core. Once the Blood Demon Core was destroyed, the Blood King beast would immediately turn into dust and disappear. But the Blood Demon Core was even more mysterious than a cultivator's primordial spirit. It could exist in any part of the Blood King beast's body and could be changed at any time. It could even be stored outside its body. Without the Blood Demon Core, the Blood King beast would not die. Even a spiritual venerable would not be able to kill it. Although the Blood King beast did not know any dark arts, it was extremely strong and fast. It was completely immune to all magic attacks. Only physical attacks were effective against it, but they couldn't kill it. They could only immobilize it for a short period of time. Just as Li Daocheng was about to attack Pan Jialuo, several blood-red figures suddenly rushed over. Several blood fiends shuttled through the air and attacked Li Daocheng, Pan Jialuo, and Silver Bottle. There was no specific target. All the contestants were their enemies. The corner of Li Daocheng's eyes flashed, and the purple mystic saber shot out in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the purple mystic saber had killed 3 blood fiends that were pouncing towards him. Silver Bottle took back the silver moonblade and fully recovered from his injuries. It was more than enough to deal with a blood fiend. Pan Jialuo, on the other hand, suffered a calamity. Only one blood fiend pounced on him, but he couldn't move at all. Naturally, he fell into its trap. The blood fiend bit Pan Jialuo's neck. The latter subconsciously closed his eyes, thinking that he would feel intense pain. However, the pain that he imagined did not happen. Pan Jialuo opened his eyes in a daze. There was only a slight itch on his neck, like a mosquito bite. Li Daocheng was a little annoyed when he saw that Pan Jialuo was attacked by a blood fiend. Pan Jialuo was his prey. Whether it was a human or a ghost, no one was allowed to snatch him from him. Oomph! Li Daocheng snorted coldly and slashed with the purple mystic saber. The blood fiend had finally sucked in the sweet blood. How could it let go so easily? It ignored the purple mystic saber. Clang! Li Daocheng's expression froze. He was surprised. A coarse and sharp claw appeared out of thin air and blocked his saber strike. Li Daocheng wouldn't have been surprised if it was a magic treasure or a demonic creature. However, what blocked the purple mystic saber was a sharp claw that looked like dead wood. No matter how ferocious and terrifying the claw was, it was still a body of flesh and blood. Well, it could be called a demonic body. However, even a demonic body couldn't be compared with a magic treasure. The purple mystic saber was already an immortal-level magic treasure. To put it simply, a magic treasure of this level could cut down an immortal. The owner of the sharp claw was actually a Blood King beast. Blood fiends were second-generation kindred created by Blood King beasts, regardless of whether they were humans or demons. After being bitten by a Blood King beast, as long as their blood wasn't sucked dry or swallowed, they would become a blood fiend. Li Daocheng was puzzled as to why the Blood King beast suddenly appeared to save a blood fiend. After all, as long as the Blood King beast was willing, it could create as many blood fiends as it wanted. The Blood King beast and Li Daocheng were both shocked and took a few steps back. The blood fiend that was desperately sucking Pan Jialuo's blood was enjoying the delicious blood as if it was thirsty. It didn't care about what was happening around it. Pan Jialuo's face quickly turned pale like a dead man. However, he didn't die and didn't go to the resurrection point. At the same time, Two terrifying spiritual pressures rushed over as a spear light pierced through. A young cultivator wearing linen clothes who looked like a farmer appeared in the sky, with a grayish-silver spear in his hand. The spear light shot towards the Blood King beast and pierced a bull-sized hole in its chest. Li Daocheng's eyes moved slightly. When the purple mystic saber clashed with the Blood King beast's claws, it only left a shallow cut. This showed how strong the Blood King beast's demonic body was. It was comparable to an immortal-level magic treasure. However, this young man pierced through the Blood King beast's body with one spear. From this, one could see that this farmer used cultivation, and the grayish-silver spear in his hand were extraordinary. Silver bottle said softly. Li Daocheng's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect the #1 prodigy of Qian Song to be like this. The other spiritual pressure was much gentler than Han Po's. However, this gentleness hid an inviolable majesty. An elegant scholar had already appeared on the side. He was playing with a bracelet that looked like a jade bead in his hand, and his other hand was behind his back. After the Blood King beast's chest was pierced, its movements were temporarily restricted. The hole was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, the Blood King beast didn't do anything during this process. It stared at Han Po with its blood-red eyes, as if it was afraid. Fellow Taoist Han, I finally know why this demonic beast appeared here. Yu Qinghe rubbed his thumb and index finger back and forth on the jade bead, as his thin lips curled up slightly. It's already so obvious. Do I need you to say it? Han Po said. The conversation between the two was random, and Li Daocheng didn't understand it. However, his immortal will flashed at a shocking speed. Millions of thoughts flashed through his mind. Li Daocheng had already investigated the Blood King beast's information. There were very detailed records of these nether demons that had appeared before in his spirit brain. After a while, Li Daocheng's expression changed. He immediately hid the silver bottle behind his back and looked at Pan Jialuo in surprise. At this moment, dozens of contestants followed closely from a void. However, none of them landed. They looked down from the sky and didn't dare to get close. These contestants were strong enough. However, they didn't dare to be careless in front of the two strongest people in the Jiushuan God realm and the Blood King beast. If they weren't careful, they could be bitten by the Blood King beast, or they could be affected by the divine ability of the two monsters and lose their lunchboxes. The appearance of the mutated Blood King beast didn't attract Emo Chensi. Looks like she's in a tight spot because of your myriad wonder talisman. Yu Qinghe looked up into the distance. Since the battle with the Blood King beast, Yu Qinghe had repeated this action several times. He seemed to be disappointed that Emo Chensi didn't appear. She will come. The Blood King beast has the Jiushuan crystal. It's impossible that she doesn't want it. Han Po said confidently. It's better if she doesn't come. I don't want to attack her. Yu Qinghe lowered his head slightly, as if he was recalling something. Jiushuan crystal? Li Daocheng rubbed his chin. At this moment, he had already retreated a short distance away while protecting Silver Bottle. The hole in the Blood King beast's chest had already healed. Instead of attacking Pan Jialuo immediately, it grabbed him and pushed him back dozens of meters. Li Daocheng frowned. He didn't know why the Blood King beast wanted to grab Pan Jialuo. Han Po's face sank. Not good. This damn beast is going to perform the Blood King's sacrifice. Yu Qinghe's hand that was playing with the jade beads suddenly trembled. 3 jade beads turned into light and shot out. The Blood King beast roared and spread its bat wings, enveloping Pan Jialuo and the Blood King beast. The 3 jade beads instantly enlarged and crashed into the Blood King beast like meteorites. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds rang out. The Blood King beast didn't move at all. Only the bones on its bat wings were slightly deformed. Crack, crack. The Blood King beast flapped its bat wings twice, and the deformed bones returned to their original state. Han Po's eyes throbbed. He couldn't help but say, "Surnamed you, even your moonfall can't do anything to this damn beast. This mutated Blood King beast is extraordinarily powerful." Yu Qinghe's eyes flashed with surprise. He couldn't help but say, I thought it would have some effect. I didn't expect it to only break a few bones. Daoist Han, your penetrating rainbow universe is indeed powerful. It even pierced through that damned beast. Chapter 848. The Blood King beast trembled violently and let out a low growl. Its tail suddenly stretched out, and the tip of the tail pierced into Pan Jalowa's head. Pan Jalowa's consciousness was blurred after his blood was sucked by the Blood King beast. He was like a pile of mud at the mercy of the Blood King beast. Yu Qinghe and Han Po's expressions changed when they saw this scene. Not good. This damned beast is going to perform the Blood King's sacrifice, someone in the void shouted. Han Po swung his spear, and the penetrating rainbow rose into the sky like a wave. The Blood King beast disappeared in the sky and reappeared several kilometers away. The blood-red silk wrapped around it and Pan Jalowa. After a while, a huge blood-red cocoon appeared in the sky. Han Po swung his spear again, and the penetrating rainbow bombarded the blood-red cocoon. Apart from a loud bang, it didn't even leave a mark. The outer layer of the blood-red cocoon was wrapped in a faint blood-red light shield. Even someone as strong as Han Po couldn't break it. The entire sky was dyed blood-red by the blood-red cocoon, as if it was the end of the world. The Demon Flame mountain range below was also illuminated blood-red. The blood fiends scattered in the mountain range were roaring under the blood-red brilliance, appearing abnormally excited. Li Daochong looked up at the huge blood-red cocoon in the sky with a thoughtful expression. Originally, he wanted to destroy Pan Jalowa's primordial spirit and make this guy a part of the Jiushuan God realm. He didn't expect that the Blood King beast would come out of nowhere and snatch Pan Jalowa away. Why did the Blood King beast capture Pan Jalowa? Li Daochong couldn't figure it out. If it was purely devouring, Pan Jalowa wouldn't even be enough to fill the gap between its teeth. It was also unlikely that it would transform into a blood fiend. Li Daochong probed with his divine sense and found that there were at least tens of thousands of blood fiends in a radius of several hundred kilometers. The Blood King beast had already transformed enough blood fiends, so it didn't matter if there were more or less. If these weren't the reason, then it could only mean that Pan Jalowa had some special characteristic that the Blood King beast needed, and this special characteristic wasn't found in others. Li Daochong pondered for a moment and looked at the blood-red cocoon in the sky again. The corner of his lips slightly raised, and the killing intent in his eyes didn't diminish. Pan Jalowa must die, and he couldn't leave the Jiushuan God's light. Otherwise, Pan Jalowa would have a chance to detonate the time explosive talisman. Once the silver bottle's body's out of Jiushuan's divine light, Pan Jiuzes. If that was the case, it wasn't that Li Daochong had no way of dealing with it, but it would be rather troublesome. Once something went wrong, the silver bottle's body would most likely be injured. After thinking about it, Li Daochong's eyes shot out a cold light, and the cyclone around him changed. Of his. S's ofs. Just as Li Daochong was about to make his move, a black ray of light suddenly shot over from the horizon like a bolt of lightning. A beautiful woman in a dark green robe pierced through the air and landed not far from Han Po and Yu Qinghe. The moment the woman appeared, the void went into an uproar. Emochensi. Cries of surprise rose and fell as everyone stared with wide eyes at the ethereal woman who had appeared in an instant. Li Daochong couldn't help but size her up when he heard the three words Emochensi. Ever since he entered the Jiushuan God's realm, this name had been mentioned almost every time he came into contact with someone. She had always been the top 3 of the war achievement rankings and had never fallen out of the top 3. A month ago, her position had fluctuated for the last time. Since then, no one had been able to shake her position. 38 million battle points became a number that could only be dreamed of. Yu Qinghe, who was in second place, only had 31 million, a difference of 7 million. Han Po was in third place with 34 million, almost the same as Yu Qinghe. In fourth place was John Doe, who had 29 million battle points. The difference between the three of them was not that great. In fifth place was Feng Qichong, whom Li Daocheng had met before, with 27 million. In sixth place was Zhu Xiaoyu, who had 26,800,000. The difference between her and Feng Qichong was almost negligible. These 6 people had firmly held onto their positions and were currently in the first tier of the entire competition. No one could shake their position. This was because Demon Dragon Mo Xing, who was in 7th place, had his battle points dropped to 11 million. The difference was too obvious. In the first tier, Mo Chenxi had left the 5 people behind her in the dust. Strictly speaking, she was the only one in the first tier. However, battle points did not fully explain everything. There was a certain amount of luck involved. There was also the issue of influence. Mo Chenxi's range of activity was not large. The reason why her battle points had soared so much was thanks to the myriad Wonder Talisman's mobilization to kill in-guns contestants. With Mo Chenxi overseeing the 9th capital, many powerful contestants thought that they were strong enough to form their own factions and gang up on Mo Chenxi. They thought that they would be able to impact Mo Chenxi. However, all the strong contestants who went to the 9th capital were mercilessly killed by Mo Chenxi. Initially, Mo Chenxi only hunted in the 9th capital like all the other contestants. However, ever since Ngun was beaten up, she took over the 9th capital and announced that the 9th capital was Ngun's exclusive hunting zone. Any contestants who were not Ngun that approached the 9th capital were killed without mercy. Since then, the 9th capital had become Ngun's sanctuary. However, there were still many contestants who did not believe it. There were also many gamblers who thought that the 9th capital was the best place to hunt down Ngun's contestants. However, before they could make a move, they would be killed and sent to the resurrection point as soon as they appeared in the 9th capital. They did not even see who killed them clearly. Although no one saw it with their own eyes, Mo Chenxi's continuous increase in battle points explained everything. Until a month ago, when a large-scale attack on the 9th capital happened. Since then, no one dared to cause trouble in the 9th capital. The Talisman of Wonders suspected that Li Daocheng was hiding in the 9th capital. Therefore, it gathered the forces of many super cultivation companies and gathered millions of powerful contestants to sweep through the 9th capital's hunting zone. The leaders were all super geniuses who were ranked in the top 10 of the Great Void Prodigy role. However, they were all killed and sent to the resurrection point as soon as they entered the 9th capital's hunting zone. They were only at the edge of the zone. This time, Mo Chenxi killed 7 super geniuses in a second under the watchful eyes of the public. The 7 of them attacked together, but they only managed to take 3 hits from Mo Chenxi. With the 4th hit, they were all killed. The remaining millions of contestants did not dare to make a move against Mo Chenxi alone. When Ngun's contestants began to gather in the 9th capital, this group of aggressive mixed forces scattered and fled like stray dogs. They looked at Mo Chenxi as if they had seen a ghost. They did not even have the courage to take a step forward. From then on, the hunting zone in the 9th capital became the exclusive hunting zone for Ngun's contestants. Mo Chenxi's battle had pushed his already unreachable strength to the peak. Her fame surpassed Han Pe and Yu Qinghe. After all, the sense of déjà vu was too strong. Killing 7 top 10 prodigies in a second was unimaginable to all the contestants. Mo Chenxi had almost never left the 9th capital. Therefore, when she descended from the sky, everyone's heart could not help but tremble. Mo Chenxi was wearing a dark green dress, and there was a thin layer of mist surrounding her body, making her look mysterious. Her tall and slender figure, coupled with her beautiful face, made her look like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world, making people want to worship her. It was normal for a normal person to have such a feeling when facing a cultivator. However, it was very difficult for cultivators to have such a feeling unless they had reached the tribulation stage or the spirit supremacy stage. At this moment, the contestants present felt a sense of admiration from Mo Chenxi. Mo Chenxi looked like she was standing on the ground, but her feet were not touching the ground. Instead, She was floating 3 inches above the ground. Her jade-like feet were actually not wearing anything. Her sparkling and translucent jade-like feet were faintly discernible under the hem of her skirt. Just a single glance was enough to captivate one's soul. Mo Chensi's beautiful eyes looked at the Blood King silkworm cocoon above her. She did not even look at the others. Even Han Pe and Yu Qinghe were ignored. It was as if she was the only one here. Li Daocheng's aura was almost gone. He shielded Yinping behind him. The 3 great prodigies were gathered here. The Blood King Silkworm's battle merits were probably a considerable number. Li Daocheng's current battle merits were still at the same value as when he advanced by leaps and bounds last time. After such a long time, his ranking had dropped to an unknown level. Of course, Li Daocheng's battle merits were not as much as they appeared on the surface. He just did not include the battle merits that he had obtained in the past into the battle merits leaderboard. Li Daocheng had obtained more than 13 million battle merits along the way. In addition to the original 2,700,000 battle merits that he had on the battle merits leaderboard. In total, he had a total of 16 million battle merits. If Li Daocheng had included all his battle merits in the battle merits leaderboard on his wristwatch, he would now be ranked 7th, surpassing Yao Long and Mo Xing. Fortunately, Li Daocheng did not include his battle merits in the battle merits leaderboard. Instead, he stored them in his wealth. Otherwise, the outside world would be shocked again. However, even 2,700,000 battle merits were enough for Li Daocheng to be ranked within the top 1,000. Chapter 849. The Blood King cocoon in the air pulsed from time to time, like a gigantic heart. Every beat was accompanied by a dull rhythm. As time passed, Mo Chensi's amazement slowly died down. Everyone's attention was focused on the Blood King cocoon, waiting for the Blood King beast to complete the Blood King ritual. The Blood King beast's power was needless to say, as most of the contestants had already experienced it. 80% of the contestants in this area had already become the Blood King beast's blood puppets. After Mo Chensi's arrival, no one mentioned the rule of attacking Ngun anymore. It was not that they had forgotten, but they did not dare to. Strength was always the prerequisite to gaining respect. Without strength, one could only take a beating. Who dared to provoke Mo Chensi? Han Pe and Yu Qinghe did not want to waste their energy fighting with Mo Chensi for no reason. Waiting became the main theme at this moment. No one made a sound as they looked at the gigantic blood-red cocoon in the air cautiously. Li Daocheng protected the silver bottle as he stared at the Blood King beast's every movement. The Blood King beast's pulsation began to increase as if the Blood King ritual was nearing its end. The Blood King beast could jump out of the cocoon at any time. Everyone's breathing became cautious. Most of the contestants were prepared to run for their lives, as they did not want to lose the battle points they had worked so hard to accumulate. Mo Chensi, how about we split the Blood King beast battle points equally? Han Pe suddenly broke the silence. Mo Chensi's beautiful eyes that were looking at the Blood King beast cocoon slowly shifted to Han Pe and said, "That works too." Han Pe was stunned, while Yu Qinghe revealed a strange expression. Both of them did not expect Mo Chensi to agree so readily. But then, I'll just watch the two of you perform. I won't do anything. Ugh. Han Pe and Yu Qinghe looked at each other. This B***TCH actually made it sound so natural to reap without sowing. Then forget it. Han Pe shrugged. Mo Chensi nodded slightly and ignored Han Pe. A few minutes later, the Blood King beast's pulsation became faster and faster, shaking the heavens and earth. Bang! Finally, with a loud thud, the Blood King beast's cocoon burst open and 2 blood-red figures jumped out. A brilliant light flashed in Han Pe's eyes. He raised the universal spear in his hand and shot it towards one of the blood shadows. Yu Qinghe's figure flashed and disappeared. Mo Chensi, on the other hand, did not move from his original position. Instead, he looked up into the void. No one knew what he was thinking, but his attention did not seem to be on the 2 blood-colored figures that had just appeared. Li Daocheng didn't move either, but his eyes were locked onto one of the blood shadows. His divine sense gushed out like a tide. observing all the movements of this blood shadow. Meanwhile, in the mountain range, a large number of blood fiends came out of their nests and charged toward the spectating contestants. The Blood King's silkworm cocoon's rupture was the signal for the blood fiends to attack. A few seconds ago, it was still a peaceful scene. Now, the heavens and the earth had turned into a battlefield of purgatory. The blood fiends were bloodthirsty and would bite anyone they saw. Their physiques were so strong that ordinary magical treasures were useless against them. Nearly 10,000 blood fiends attacked at the same time. That battle formation was earth-shattering. There were only a few hundred contestants present. Although they were all elites in this competition, they were still somewhat powerless in the face of such a large number of blood fiends. Some of the contestants wanted to protect themselves and escape, but the blood fiends were everywhere. There was nowhere to run. Their only choice was to fight with their lives on the line. The Blood King's sacrifice was a dark art unique to the Blood King beast. Simply put, it was like a clone technique. However, it was different from a clone technique. After creating two identical bodies, one's strength would not be affected. The biggest limitation of this technique was the compatibility of the sacrificial host's soul. It had to be a living person whose soul had fallen into a dead state. After Pan-Jaloa ate the spirit-bursting pill, all the vitality in his primordial spirit was squeezed out. While his strength increased greatly, the price he paid was that his soul had fallen into a dead state. The Blood King's silkworm cocoon exploded, and two blood shadows shot out. One was the Blood King beast's main body, and the other was the clone created by Pan-Jaloa after the Blood King's sacrifice. Han-Pa and Yu-Ching-Ha were currently attacking the Blood King beast's main body. Under the joint attack of the two Sky Prides, the Blood King beast was still at ease. The intensity of the battle was devastating. In just a few minutes, a large area of the mountain range was razed to the ground. The other contestants and the Blood King beast all consciously avoided the center of the battle. Just as the battle between the Blood King beast and the two Sky Prides reached its climax, the Blood King beast's expression suddenly changed. A gap appeared in the blood-red sky, and the Blood King beast disappeared in an instant. Han-Pa and Yu-Ching-Ha were still unable to stop the Blood King beast from escaping at full speed. This scene caused the two Sky Prides to look at each other. Just as the two of them spread out their divine senses to search for the Blood King beast's whereabouts, a blood-red light shot down from the sky, heading straight for Han-Pa. Its speed was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning. Caught off guard, Han-Pa was startled. The universe spear in his hand stabbed out reflexively. Boom! Blood-red lightning poured into the spear. Han-Pa plummeted to the ground like a meteor. Mountain peaks collapsed one after another. Boom! Finally, a huge mushroom cloud erupted. All the contestants fighting the Blood King beast broke out in cold sweat. If even Han-Pa couldn't withstand it, what were they supposed to do? Pooh! Han-Pa flew out from the center of the huge crater. Apart from the dust on his face, he was unscathed. His expression was indifferent, but there was a hint of killing intent in his eyes. The blood-red shadow that crashed into Han-Pa revealed itself. It was the Blood King beast that had returned. Yu-Ching-Ha's eyes narrowed slightly. He seemed to have realized something. Han-Pa spat and wiped his mouth. Pooh, it really ran away. It's an imposter. Yu-Ching-Ha disagreed. Fellow Taoist Han, this is not an imposter. It's the product of the Blood King's sacrifice. Han-Pa disagreed. Is there a difference? Yu-Ching-Ha smiled. Of course there's a difference. The Blood King beast is equivalent to the Blood King beast proxy. Their strength is almost the same. How can it be an imposter? Han-Pa curled his lips. Who cares what it is? I'll just stab it to death. With that said, the universe spear in Han-Pa's hand let out a dragon's roar. The spear shot out like a dragon, covering the sky and earth. The blood-red clouds were blasted away by the shockwave. Spear of heaven and earth. Han-Pa shouted softly and suddenly stabbed out with the universe spear in his hand. A super spear light with a diameter of over 1 kilometer shot out. Many contestants were aghast. Wherever the spear light passed, all the blood fiends were blasted into smithereens, but the contestants were unharmed. The spear light shot straight toward the Blood King beast. The Blood King beast did not seem to have much of a reaction. Seeing the spear light whizzing toward him, an inconspicuous red sickle in his hand slashed through the air. Space seemed to be cut apart. Crack, 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 clang, clang. The red space that seemed to be cut apart collided with the spear light. With a boom, they canceled each other out and disappeared. Hanpo was stunned for a moment. His signature spirit art had actually been broken so easily. As one of the three monstrous geniuses of the human domain, he felt embarrassed. Hanpo attacked again in anger. However, before he could attack, a blood-red figure had already appeared in front of him. The Blood King beast appeared in front of Hanpo like a ghost. There was a faint smile on his face and a hint of playfulness in his eyes. The Blood King beast's face was Pan Jalawa's slightly wretched face. Pan Jalawa had not lost himself, but he was no longer himself. He was a clone of the Blood King beast. Hanpo was shocked. He hurriedly raised his spear and stabbed at the Blood King beast. Clang! The blood-red sickle and the universe spear collided. There was an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding. At the same time, a shockwave exploded. Everywhere it passed, blood beasts and participants were cut in half. For a moment, the void was filled with blood. These unlucky participants and blood beasts were sent to the resurrection point before they could react. The battle between Hanpo and the Blood King beast shook the heavens and the earth. The entire space was trembling. Seeing that Hanpo could only defend himself, Yuqinghe slowly raised a prismatic magic treasure in his hand. It looked like a shield, but its four edges were sharp and piercing. Just looking at it made one feel the pain of being pierced. The prismatic shield was grayish-brown. It was not made of magic gold. Instead, it was made of the jade, clear, Great Void Republic's most precious immortal stone, the Clear Jade Stone. The Clear Jade Stone was a high-grade, immortal-level gem. The entire jade, clear Great Void Republic's annual production was less than 5 kilograms. This shield was Yuqinghe's natal magic treasure, the Clear Jade Shield. Yuqinghe unhurriedly took out a pair of silver gloves and wore them on his hands. The radiance in his eyes instantly changed. The previous scholarly air disappeared and was replaced by a bloodthirsty decisiveness. Very few people had seen Yuqinghe in action. No one would have thought that this scholarly man was actually a close combat cultivator. If they did not see it with their own eyes, it would be hard to imagine that the scholarly Yuqinghe was a combat cultivator. Hanpo was fighting the Blood King beast alone. He did not have the upper hand at all. He was even beaten to the point where he could not retaliate. This was unimaginable in the eyes of the other participants. Among the three monstrous geniuses of the human domain, Hanpo had fought the most. His universe spear was invincible. The spear was like a dragon, piercing through the heavens and earth. However, all of Hanpo's divine abilities were useless against the Blood King beast. As the clone of the Blood King beast, the Blood King beast's strength was clearly stronger than expected. At this moment, everyone watching the battle in the void was shocked. If even Hanpo and the other two were unable to deal with the Blood King beast, everyone here would become food for the Blood King beast. However, the one who was most shocked was Yinping. Not long ago, Pan Jiao was only a dead cultivator who had consumed the spiritual bursting pill. All the potential of his soul power had been exhausted. In order to deal with Li Daochong, he had no choice but to use despicable means to kidnap her. He even tried his best to rope in Yihong. However, he still could not do anything to Li Daochong. He was even beaten black and blue in front of everyone. But now, Pan Jalawa's strength had already surpassed Hanpo's. Such a violent leap in strength made Yinping unable to believe that there was such a terrifying technique in the world. Li Daochong looked up at the void and was not in a hurry to make a move. After Pan Jalawa became the Blood King beast, his strength had increased sharply. However, Li Daochong was more concerned about the Blood King beast's movements at this moment. It was very strange that this demonic beast had suddenly disappeared. Li Daochong felt that the Blood King beast did not run away. After spending so much effort to complete the Blood King beast sacrifice, it ran away right after completing it. No matter how he thought about it, it did not make sense. Fellow Taoist is searching for the Blood King beast. Just as Li Daochong was searching for the Blood King beast's traces with all his strength, a pleasant and ethereal voice entered his ears. Unknowingly, Imo Chinsi had appeared not far from Li Daochong. Her beautiful eyes were like the clear moon as she looked at Li Daochong indifferently. And Li Daochong did not look sideways and simply replied, "If anyone saw Li Daochong's state when facing Imo Chinsi, they would definitely be surprised. Facing a cultivator of Imo Chinsi's level, the majority of cultivators would be intimidated by the spiritual pressure that she naturally emitted. They could not help but feel a sense of submission in their hearts. However, Li Daochong acted as if he did not see Imo Chinsi. His expression was calm. Even Imo Chinsi's heart rippled. Other than Han Pe and Yu Qinghe, no one in the younger generation could be so calm in front of her. A layer of waves appeared under Li Daochong's seemingly calm expression. His strongest spiritual sense could not hide in front of Imo Chinsi. She had already seen through him. Fellow Taoist, your spiritual sense is as strong as a late-stage body integration cultivator. I never thought that there would be a talent like you in the human domain's spirit world. I just don't know why the myriad mystery spirit talisman wants to hunt you down." Imo Chinsi continued. "Fairy, you're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? The myriad mystery spirit talisman can't afford to lose. It's my fault." Li Daochong shrugged disapprovingly. He tried his best to hide the awkwardness of having his identity exposed. In fact, Li Daochong had always used his spiritual sense to conceal his appearance. Therefore, what others saw was not his original appearance. There were still some differences. His appearance had been spread everywhere by the myriad mystery spirit talisman. Some powerful cultivators could recognize him at a glance. However, Li Daochong's spiritual sense was so strong that it could easily interfere with most people's observation and visual effects. Even Han Pe and Yu Qinghe did not recognize Li Daochong when they were not paying attention. However, Imo Chinsi seemed to have recognized him long ago. Imo Chinsi smiled faintly. As if she wanted to say something, a ray of light flashed in the void. Boom! A deafening sound shook the sky. Heaven and earth seemed to be torn apart. The collision between Yu Qinghe and the blood sacrifice triggered the doomsday effect. Han Pe stabbed out with his spear. The blood sacrifice shot out a blood-colored bone spike to block the attack. 1 against 2. The blood sacrifice was still not at a disadvantage. The two monsters' eyes were filled with shock. They knew that the Blood King beast was powerful, but they did not expect it to be this powerful. This was far beyond their imagination. However, the two of them managed to stop the blood sacrifice. He could not move for a while. Imo Chinsi, are you still not going to attack? Han Pe shouted anxiously. Almost at the same time, a blood-colored void door suddenly opened. A blood-colored shadow shot out and pierced through Han Pe's chest. Han Pe, who was in a deadlock with the blood sacrifice, could not dodge. He could only watch as the blood-colored shadow shot toward him. Chapter 850. Everyone thought that Han Pe would be defeated in the Jiuquan Divine Realm and become the first super genius to be sent to the Resurrection Point. One had to know that none of the top 3 geniuses of the 3 empires had been killed. Who would have thought that Han Pe would be the first? Han Pe roared and fought with his life on the line. His eyes glowed with white light. The Qingquan technique was fully activated. However, Han Pe had not fully mastered this technique. It was a high-grade, immortal-level technique. Only those who had passed the tribulation could fully control it. Although Han Pe could use it with his current strength, it might damage his primordial spirit. This would have a negative impact on his future cultivation. At the critical moment, a ray of light shot up into the sky like the light of Buddha. It was silent, but had an inviolable majesty. Boom! With a loud sound, the blood shadow was hit by the ray of light. The ray of light dissipated and the blood shadow was sent flying. The white light in Han Po's eyes gradually dissipated. His shocked expression calmed down, and he looked down. At the critical moment, Emochensi had saved him. The blood shadow was the Blood King beast that had suddenly disappeared. Void concealment. Yu Qinghe finally understood that the Blood King beast had not escaped. It had been hiding in the void, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Han Po's eyes flashed, and he gritted his teeth. This demonic beast knows such a profound dark art. Yu Qinghe frowned. The Blood King beast should not know such a dark art. How can the nether demons of the Jiuquan divine realm be so powerful? Yu Qinghe felt a chill down his spine. Regardless of the attributes of all living beings in the Jiuquan divine realm, the more powerful they were, the more terrifying the Jiuquan spiritual paragon was. One had to know that everything here was created by the Jiuquan spiritual paragon. Was this really the descent of an immortal? Yu Qinghe knew that the Jiuquan spiritual paragon was powerful, but he did not expect it to be this powerful. This had far exceeded the limits of his imagination. However, if the Jiuquan spiritual paragon was so powerful, why was the domain spirit world still so afraid of the Hades? Could it be that the Hades were the nether demons that were even more powerful than the devil sovereigns? For the first time in his life, Yu Qinghe, who had always thought highly of himself, felt so insignificant. Yu Qinghe began to reevaluate the strength of spirit paragons. When Emochensi made his move, the other contestants were shocked and felt a little more confident. Over the past few months, Emochensi's prestige in the Jiuquan god realm had reached its peak. He had long since surpassed Yu Qinghe and Han Po. The Blood King beast was sent flying for a few kilometers before coming to a stop. It floated in the air and stared coldly at Emochensi with its blood-red eyes. The aura emanating from the female cultivator made the Blood King beast extremely uncomfortable. The reason why it had used the great underworld art to conceal itself in the void was because it was afraid of Emochensi. He didn't expect his sneak attack to fail. The Blood King beast sneered. It raised its two bloody hands and chanted a series of words. The clouds in the entire sky gathered together and rolled like the waves of the sea. The color gradually turned blood-red. Roar! A muffled and terrifying roar came from the clouds. Yu Qinghe and Han Po, who were still locked in a stalemate with the blood sacrificer, looked at each other. Han Po was shocked. Not good. It's the demonic blood dragon. Yu Qinghe put his index and middle fingers together and quickly chanted a series of incantations. Heaven and earth, I invite the gods. Jade clear shield, crush the demon barbarians. The jade clear shield grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it turned into a giant shield the size of a mountain. A series of runes were engraved on the shield. The blood sacrificer felt a buzzing sound in his head. The demonic chi in his body became chaotic. At this moment, the blood sacrificer's palms were facing Yu Qinghe's palms. He was in a stalemate with Han Po using a bloodbone spur. Both sides were fighting with their chi. They couldn't separate. When Yu Qinghe used this ability, the blood sacrificer immediately felt that he couldn't hold on. He had no choice but to use all his strength to repel the demonic blood dragon. Only then did he manage to use the rebound force to separate them. The blood sacrificer's expression was slightly pained. He quickly retreated to the Blood King beast's side. The three monsters, Emochensi, Yu Qinghe, and Han Po, floated side by side in the sky. The jade clear shield stood behind them. On the other side, the Blood King beast and the blood sacrificer were facing each other. Behind them, blood-red clouds kept rolling. Suddenly, a blood-red dragon head poked its head out of the clouds. It breathed out a ball of blood-red flames to the ground. The demonic blood dragon slowly flew out of the clouds. 1, 2, 3. There were actually 3 of them. The demonic blood dragon was huge. It was more than 100 meters long. Its entire body was covered in a layer of blood-red scales. The demonic blood dragon looked exactly the same as the ancient dragons in the human land spirit realm. The only difference was that it was blood red. The three demonic blood dragons' eyes were like gongs. Then their bodies twisted and shrunk. Soon, they turned into three demonic blood dragons. The transformation technique wasn't a high-level technique. In the past, the demons could form a demon core and transform into a human. The demonic blood dragon had a head full of red hair. The two horns on its forehead were as sharp as knives. Its body was 3 meters tall. Its entire body was covered in blood-red scales like armor. Its pair of blood-red claws were terrifying. Its feet were also claw-shaped. On the Blood King Beast side, there were 5 people instead of 2. At the same time, the blood fiends that were fighting with the contestants seemed to have been summoned. They stopped fighting and flew toward the Blood King Beast. Soon, all of them gathered around the Blood King Beast. The Blood Army was assembled in an instant. The remaining contestants consciously moved closer to the 3 monsters. Under the protection of the clear jade shield, they also gathered together. There were less than 300 contestants left. The rest of them had gone to the resurrection point. Of course, 2,000 to 3,000 blood fiends had also been killed. In terms of numbers, the Blood King Beast had the absolute advantage. There were at least 5,000 to 6,000 blood fiends. The situation was extremely unfavorable for the contestants. At this moment, a few strong auras came from the void in the distance. Several groups of contestants were rushing over. "Black Fairy, let's lend you a hand." A shout came from afar. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dozens of contestants wearing the Cloud Jade Robe's unique turquoise battle armor came together. The leader was a middle-aged man whose bone age was more than 50 years old. He was the leader of the Cloud Jade Robe's team, Luo Qingmu. He was at the mid-stage of the Void Refinement Realm. He was second only to Mo Chensi in the Cloud Jade Robe. However, due to his age, his potential could not be compared to a young man in his 30s. Luo Qingmu's goal in the competition was to guide the young people to achieve better results and protect them. The Cloud Jade Robe was one of the top 10 cultivation companies. The young cultivators they sent to the competition were naturally powerful. The weakest among them was at the early stage of the Soul Formation Realm. There were 10 of them at the Void Refinement Realm. Their appearance immediately made the weak contestant camp much more solid. Mo Chensi nodded slightly at Luo Qingmu. Then, he turned his gaze toward the Blood King Beast. "Young Master Yu, please forgive me for being late." Another clear voice came from the clouds in the distance. Dozens of combat cultivators dressed in the high-end military uniforms of the Jade Clear Great Void Republic gathered around them. Every single one of them had solemn expressions. They were like emotionless killing machines as they lined up neatly behind Yu Qinghe. The leader was a female combat cultivator wearing a great void battle armor with 3 great void stripes and a Taiji star on her shoulder. This woman was the youngest 2-star weapon refiner in the Jade Clear Military, Shangwan Yuehong. She was a major general. In the Jade Clear Military, her position was second only to Yu Qinghe and Feng Qichong. If one had to rank the strength of the younger generation of the top 10 cultivation companies, the Jade Clear Great Void Republic would be the strongest. The Jade Clear Military was the strongest overall. They were much stronger than the second-ranked company. Although the Cloud Jade Robe had the heaven-defying monster Mo Chensi, no one else stood out. On the other hand, the Jade Clear Military not only had the heaven-defying monster Yu Qinghe, but also Feng Qichong and Shangwan Yuehong, who had the same cultivation potential. The 3 of them occupied 3 of the top 5 spots in the Jade Clear Great Void Republic's prodigy role. Of course, the Jade Clear Great Void Republic had not only the 3 of them. There was also Zhu Xiaoyu. Therefore, the Jade Clear Great Void Republic had the most powerful cultivators among the younger generation of the 3 great cultivation empires. Qiansong was second, and Ingun was last. "It's good that you're here. You're not late." Yu Qinghe smiled. Shangwan Yuehong smiled gently at Yu Qinghe. Her face, which had always been solemn, had a hint of redness. The Jade Clear Military was the largest cultivation military enterprise in the Jade Clear Great Void Republic. It was directly under the military, and all of its employees were cultivator soldiers. Since you're all here, how can we be left out? Young Master Han, I'm here. Just as Shangwan Yuehong stopped, laughter came from behind. Hundreds of participants wearing dark yellow robes covered in runes appeared out of thin air. They seemed to have teleported through the void and appeared behind Han Pa. Leading them was the youngest protector of the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. The rune robe was a comprehensive robe unique to the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. Its grade was not high, but every rune on the robe had a purpose. It could be used for both offense and defense. Almost all of the participants of the 10,000 Wonders Talismans competition were gathered together to support Han Pa. The three sides were one. The aura of the contestants immediately changed. The team of less than 300 people expanded to nearly 600 people. Some scattered participants also rushed over from other places. Although there were not many of them, there were still 300 to 400 people. Soon, the team expanded to about 1,000 people. Compared to the Blood Beast army, their numbers were still pathetically small, but their aura was not inferior. After all, the quality of these 1,000 participants was extremely high. At least half of the top prodigies in the entire Jiushuan realm of the gods were here. The Blood Beast King's eyes were as red as blood, and the 4 sharp fangs in its mouth were terrifying. Looking at the gathering participants, a cold smile appeared on its pale face, and its tongue unconsciously licked the side of its lips. Young Master, should we join the team of participants? Silver Bottle stood beside Li Daochong and asked softly. Chapter 851. There's no need for that. Our target is only Panjiao, Li Daochong said lightly. As soon as he said that, a roar came from the void. The Blood Beast army, led by a demonic blood dragon, attacked the contestants. Thousands of blood beasts pounced on them like crazy. Over 1,000 contestants displayed their various abilities, unleashing all of their trump cards. The elites of the 3 major cultivation companies, Cloud Jade Vestment, Jade Clear Military, and Myriad Wonder Talisman, led the charge. As soon as the 2 sides met, there was a rain of blood, and broken limbs flew in all directions. The strength of a blood beast was determined by its strength before it was transformed. The stronger it was when it was transformed by the Blood King beast, the stronger it would be after it was transformed. Therefore, the strength of the blood beasts varied. Some of the blood beasts could be cut in half by a random contestant. They turned into a rain of blood and went to the resurrection point. Almost all of the blood beasts were transformed by the Blood King beasts of the contestants. Once they died, they would go to the resurrection point. After they were resurrected, they would no longer be blood beasts. However, there were some blood fiends that even powerful prodigies might not be able to defeat, even if they used their natal Dharma treasures to attack. Their physical bodies were ridiculously strong. However, the blood beasts with abnormal strength were in the minority. The overall quality of the contestants was obviously higher than the blood beasts. The 2 armies fought fiercely for a few minutes. More than half of the blood beasts were killed. Yu Qinghe, Mo Chensi, and Han Pa stared at the Blood King beast. If it did not move, they would not move. Out of the 3 demonic blood dragons, only 1 joined the battle. Ma Lai, Shangwan Yuehong, and Luo Qingmu were more than enough to deal with it. The 3 of them were among the top 10 of the genius roll in their respective empires. One of the demonic blood dragons was attacked by the 3 of them and was almost killed. Seeing this, the other 2 demonic blood dragons could no longer hold back. Their blood-red eyes were filled with murderous intent, and they were about to rush over to help. But they were stopped by the Blood King beast. Where is your opponent? Go! The Blood King beast's voice was as deep as thunder as it spoke in an unquestionable tone. The 2 demonic blood dragons roared anxiously. They were unwilling, but they did not dare to disobey the Blood King beast's order. Then, the 2 demonic blood dragons turned into 2 blood-red flames and rushed toward Mo Chensi and the other 2. The 3 prodigies remained motionless in the air. Han Po flicked his hands, and 2 talismans flew out. Han Po's natal magic treasure was the universe spear, but what he was really good at was talismans. He was the youngest 4-star spirit sequencer in the history of myriad profundity talismans. And Ghoul, who had been killed by Li Daochong, was already considered a super genius in the field of spirit sequences. But in front of Han Po, Ghoul was just an insignificant star beside the Crimson Moon. What was even more difficult was that Han Po was also a combat cultivator. Moreover, he was also very talented and could use the universe spear to perfection. Han Po rarely used talismans and was more interested in close-range combat. Long-range attacks were too boring. Of course, this did not mean that Han Po did not know how to use talismans. None of the talismans on Han Po's body were lower than level 21. Every one of them was extremely powerful. It was a super talisman that could destroy heaven and earth. The 2 talismans, one ice and one fire, were enhanced level 22 talismans made by Han Po himself. The 2 talismans collided with the blood-red flames of the demonic blood dragon. Instantly, a tsunami-like explosion occurred. Heaven and earth dimmed at that moment. If not for the fact that the demonic blood dragon also contained a powerful energy that neutralized most of the talisman's power, the participants who were fighting around them would have been killed. Han Po looked in the direction where the demonic blood dragon came from and smiled disdainfully. In his opinion, these 2 reckless demon beasts should have been killed already. The smoke and dust dispersed. Han Po's eyes widened as he looked in surprise at the demonic blood dragon, who had only suffered some superficial wounds. Such powerful talismans only left some burn marks and ice wounds on the 2 demonic blood dragons. The strength of the demonic blood dragon's body could no longer be described with words. One had to know that a level 22 talisman was enough to turn a demon king level nether demon into ashes. Yu Qinghe's eyes narrowed. He was also surprised. He was very clear about the power of Han Po's talismans. Only Mo Chenxi's beautiful face remained unchanged. It was as if nothing had happened. Instead, her beautiful eyes would inadvertently look down at where Li Daochong was standing. Young master, what a powerful talisman. Yinping had followed Li Daochong for so many years, so she naturally knew about talismans. In the eyes of the little girl, no one in this world could compare with Li Daochong in terms of talisman crafting. At this moment, Yinping's heart was slightly shaken. The power of the 2 talismans just now was comparable to the talismans made by her young master. Yes, it's very powerful. Li Daochong's eyes flashed with interest. He looked at Han Po with surprise. He did not expect this guy to have an enhanced talisman. It was Li Daochong's first time seeing someone other than himself with an enhanced talisman. Moreover, it was such a high-level enhanced talisman. Just as everyone's attention was focused on the terrifying power of the talisman, just now, a bloody shadow suddenly appeared beside Han Po. The blood shaman had actually launched a sneak attack, as if it had teleported. Han Po was secretly shocked. Facing the bloody demon claw, he immediately raised his universe spear to block. Yu Qinghe wanted to help, but the 2 demonic blood dragons flanked him from both sides, making it impossible for him to help Han Po. Mo Chenxi had no intention of helping Han Po. Her figure flashed and disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already behind the Blood King beast. In her eyes, there was nothing but the Blood King beast. Even the insufferably arrogant Mo Chenxi did not dare to be careless in front of the Blood King beast. She used her natal talisman from the beginning, Chen Shi's yin-yang line. It was a silver thread that could stretch freely, and its length was unknown. No one knew what this thing was made of, nor did they know what grade it was. They only knew that Mo Chenxi often used this spiritual talisman. Not only was it extremely lethal, but it also seemed to be infinitely long. The silver thread intertwined like a net of light and enveloped the Blood King beast. Whoosh! A bloody brilliance flashed past. The Blood King beast's bloody scythe cut through the void, instantly forming a gap. The Blood King beast dove in. The silver net caught nothing. The Blood King beast emerged from the void behind, and Mo Chenxi and swung its bloody scythe at the latter's spine. Emochinsi did not move. She raised her hands and pulled a silver thread horizontally. Clang! The terrifying bloody scythe struck the silver thread that was only as thick as a hair, producing a crisp sound of metal colliding. The bloody scythe was ferocious and heavy. It was obviously a heavy talisman weapon. The silver thread was so thin and delicate that it seemed like it could be broken with a gentle pull. But under this strong visual contrast, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. The silver thread blocked the bloody scythe that was slashing down, producing a piercing sound of metal colliding that could only be produced when two heavy weapons collided. Huh! The Blood King beast was surprised. It looked at the silver thread that was as thick as a hair in disbelief. Such a tiny thing could actually block its bloody scythe. On the other side, Hanpa stabbed out with a spear. The spear light was like lightning, piercing the blood priest's waist. The blood priest also had a bloody scythe that was identical to the Blood King beast's in his hand. He swung it horizontally. The two weapons collided. The recoil instantly separated Hanpa and the blood priest and sent them flying back dozens of meters. The battle between Yu Qinghe and the two demonic blood dragons was almost indistinguishable to the naked eye. Both sides were fighting in close quarters, and the collision of fists and claws was constantly producing muffled sounds. But only the sounds could be heard. The fists and claws could not be seen at all. It was as if they had disappeared. In fact, the speed was so fast that it gave the illusion that they had disappeared. It was said that two fists were no match for four hands. But it was a little inappropriate for Yu Qinghe to say that. The two demonic blood dragons were overwhelmed by this elegant scholar's fists. Their four claws were almost unable to hold on. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have imagined that Yu Qinghe, who looked gentle and weak on the outside, would be so fierce. He was much fiercer than those violent combat cultivators. Battles were taking place in the sky and on the ground. There were all kinds of divine abilities and blood beasts everywhere. For a moment, it was like a purgatory. Only the area below, where Li Daochong and the silver bottle, where it was peaceful and undisturbed. Strangely enough, no blood beasts attacked them. It was as if they did not exist. Just like that, the fierce battle continued for dozens of minutes. The number of contestants and blood beasts kept decreasing. Those who were still fighting were the strongest among the strongest. The battle became more and more desperate as time went on. Some contestants even detonated their primordial spirits and perished together with a few powerful blood beasts. Even in the Jiushuan realm of the gods, most of the cultivators carried the pride of cultivators and would not show their fear in front of these beasts. The Blood King beast suddenly chanted the Netherworld language. The remaining blood beasts suddenly retreated and gathered together. Less than 1,000 blood beasts were left out of the 6,000. The contestants also suffered heavy losses. Only about 200 of them could continue fighting. What happened next shocked all the contestants once again. The blood beasts actually fused with each other. Every 10 blood beasts fused into a new body. Their appearance did not change at all, but the demonic blood chi on their bodies grew explosively. They looked ferocious and furious, their veins bulging and their eyes blood red. In a short while, the nearly 1,000 blood beasts fused into 90 violent blood beasts. Roars came from their mouths. The blood shaman and the 3 demonic blood dragons also retreated. The 3 demonic blood dragons were badly injured. One of them had almost lost its ability to fight. Half of the blood-red scales on its body had fallen off. It looked like it was about to die. The Blood King beast drew something in the void with its hands. Then, a strange sound came from its mouth. Then it slapped one of the demonic blood dragons. The demonic blood dragon looked up to the sky in pain and roared. Its ribs exploded one by one, as if it was opening its mouth. The other 2 demonic blood dragons had twisted expressions and pounced on the demonic blood dragon. The 3 demonic blood dragons fused with each other. In less than a moment, a new demonic blood dragon with a huge body appeared in the void. Its mouth bulged, and sharp teeth could be seen clearly. The Blood King beast finished everything and smiled eerily at Emochensi and the other two. I didn't want to use this move because it consumed too much energy. I didn't expect you guys to force me to use it. Hanpa held the universe spear in his hand and stood in the void like a spear god. His eyes were fearless. He snorted and said, "Humph, if you have any other tricks, just use them. Don't be like a woman. It's so annoying." The Blood King beast smiled and said, "Hanpa, you're ranked 3rd on the war achievement list, right? Since you're so annoyed, I'll start with you. Blood Shaman, stop playing with him. Just suck his primordial spirit." Yes. A bloodthirsty look flashed across the Blood Shaman's eyes. "Daoist Han, I'll deal with that damned beast." Yu Qinghe observed and found that the Blood Shaman's move had a restraining effect on Hanpa. No one is allowed to take my prey. Hanpa was unwilling to pass on his responsibility. "You two find another opponent. Leave the Blood Shaman to me," Emochensi suddenly said. Yu Qinghe and Hanpa were stunned. They did not expect Emochensi to be interested in the Blood Shaman. "Daoist Emo, I've already given the Blood King beast to you. Are you still not satisfied? You want to snatch the Blood Shaman too?" Hanpa frowned. In his opinion, Emochensi was obviously trying to snatch the war achievement. "Daoist Han, don't misunderstand. I'll let you have the Blood King beast. I only want the Blood Shaman," Emochensi said calmly. Hanpa was puzzled. He did not know what Emochensi was trying to do. However, if he had to choose between the Blood King beast and the Blood Shaman, he would naturally choose the Blood King beast. "Really?" Hanpa did not believe it. "Really?" Emochensi nodded slightly. "All right, then the Blood King beast is mine. I'll let you have the Blood Shaman." Hanpa had no reason to refuse. Yu Qinghe did not say anything, but he was puzzled. He did not know why Emochensi suddenly gave up the Blood King beast. He had already acquiesced to give the Blood King beast to her. Why don't you give it up now? Could it be that the Blood Shaman's war achievement was higher than the Blood King beast's? "He's my prey." As soon as the 3 Sky Prides finished speaking, a clear voice came from the side. Li Daochong, who had been watching the battle for a long time, finally appeared in the middle of the battle. Chapter 852. Both Yu Qinghe and Hanpa frowned and looked in the direction of the voice. They saw an unfamiliar young cultivator in a purple robe flying up from below. The 2 prodigies couldn't help but reveal a cold expression. There was no room for others to interrupt their conversation. In the Jioshuan God realm, the 3 of them were at the top of the pyramid. No one could compare to them. Even Feng Qichong, who was second only to them, didn't have the right to speak, let alone a nameless kid. There was a clear distinction between the positions of self-cultivators. Everyone had a consensus that it was disrespectful for a low-level self-cultivator to interrupt a conversation between a higher-level self-cultivator. The seniority of self-cultivators didn't depend on age, only cultivation strength. Even if the stronger cultivator was 100 years younger than the weaker one, the latter would still have to address the former as senior. Emochensi's eyes moved slightly, as if he had expected this. He looked at Li Daochong without too many distracting thoughts. "Who do you think you are?" As soon as Li Daochong appeared, someone behind him hooted before the 3 prodigies could say anything. Those who overestimated themselves have been despised since ancient times. The remaining contestants were all outstanding figures of the younger generation. Each of them was an elite among the elites. Suddenly, a kid appeared and shamelessly wanted to snatch the credit from the 3 prodigies. These elites immediately found it laughable. If the newcomer had a strong aura, he could have controlled the situation. However, the newcomer's aura was only at the Yuanying stage. This was even more laughable. It was no wonder that some people blurted out. The others looked at Li Daochong as if they were looking at an idiot. They all thought that this guy was an idiot and had a problem with his brain. "Kid, did the blood fiend damage your brain? Are you having a stroke now?" Immediately, someone mocked. Immediately, there was a burst of laughter. The tense atmosphere on the battlefield dissipated a lot. The Blood King beast's eyes were sinister. It didn't change anything because of the interlude on the contestant's side. The reason why it didn't attack immediately was because it saw everything about Li Daochong from the blood sacrifices memories. After the Blood King beast turned Pan Jialoa into a blood sacrifice, it inherited everything from Pan Jialoa. The Blood King beast was still the main consciousness, but the blood sacrifice that had become his clone was also a part of him. Therefore, Pan Jialoa's hatred would also be absorbed by the Blood King beast. Li Daochong's appearance caused the Blood King beast to temporarily stop its attack and adjust its strategy. The divine sense barrier was useless in front of the Blood King beast's true blood eye. It recognized Li Daochong through the blood sacrifices memories. Li Daochong paid no attention to the surrounding laughter, as if he did not hear or see anything. He slowly flew up into the sky and arrived at the middle of the confrontation between the violent Blood Beast army and the contestants. This kid looks familiar. Someone seemed to think of something. Familiar? I've never seen him before. Of course he looks familiar. I see him everywhere. A participant said disdainfully. Han Pe and Yu Qinghe didn't take this nameless pawn seriously at all. However, the two of them soon discovered something strange. Li Daochong's body was surrounded by a layer of divine sense barrier, which changed his appearance. Humph! You don't even dare to show your true face. How dare you speak so arrogantly? Break! Han Pe snorted coldly and shot out a divine sense. Li Daochong just stood in the air and did not block Han Pe's divine sense attack. Whoosh! The divine sense barrier that had been surrounding Li Daochong disappeared. Li Daochong returned to his original appearance. Instantly, everyone was in an uproar. Li Daochong! Someone immediately exclaimed. Everyone's eyes widened. No one had expected that the guy who had been attacked by everyone would appear in such a situation. It's you. Han Pe tightened his grip on the universe spear, and a murderous light shot out from his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit chi around Han Pe exploded. The universe spear shone brightly under the influence of the spirit chi. Spirit Sovereign Wan Miao had instructed him to kill Li Daochong if he saw him. Han Pe, you're the #1 prodigy in Qian Song, but you don't know what's important. I don't care about the grudges between your Spirit Sovereign Wan Miao talisman and Li Daochong. However, when facing the underworld demon, we're all human cultivators. Our main goal is to fight against the underworld demon, not to fight among ourselves. Even if this is only a test in the Jiuquan realm of the gods, we will not allow personal grudges to override the survival of our race. If you attack Li Daochong, it will be a declaration of war against my Cloud Jade robes. Mo Chenxi's cold voice slowly rang out. Her voice was neither fast nor slow. There are no sound waves, but it still gave people an extremely strong sense of oppression. Yu Qing has said from the side, fellow Taoist Han, let's kill the Blood King beast first. Han Pe's grip on the universe spear tightened. In the end, he loosened his grip, and the spiritual highland swirling around him weakened. Li Daochong, this is none of your business. I'll deal with you after I kill these beasts, Han Pe said sternly. Li said that the blood sacrifice is Li's prey. No one is allowed to touch it. If anyone touches it, Li will kill them, Li Daochong said calmly. Li Daoyu, are you trying to snatch it from me? Mo Chenxi said unhappily. Do I have to repeat myself? The blood sacrifice is mine, Li Daochong said without looking at Mo Chenxi. The rest of the participants thought that Li Daochong must have lost his mind after being hunted down for so long. Mo Chenxi had just spoken up for him and stopped Han Pe from attacking. Not only did this brat not appreciate it, he even turned his back on her and shouted at Mo Chenxi. In the eyes of the other participants, it was ridiculous. Let's not talk about other things. Can you beat Mo Chenxi? In the entire spiritual realm, no one in the younger generation was Mo Chenxi's opponent. Not even Han Pe and Yu Qinghe. Mo Chenxi had just said that infighting was not allowed. The other participants naturally did not dare to do that. However, seeing Li Daochong being so arrogant and unreasonable, someone couldn't help but say, if he wants it, let him take the lead. Yes, let him take the lead. Everyone understood what he meant. If you can do it, then go ahead. If the blood sacrifice is your prey, then it is your prey. In everyone's eyes, Li Daochong would be killed by the blood sacrifice in one move. There was no need to waste time talking to him. Li Daochong turned a deaf ear to the clamor from the back. His eyes were fixed on Pan Jialoa. This person must be killed. You human cultivators are really interesting. If it wasn't for the bad nature in your bones, how could you be suppressed by the Hades? If you can unite, no matter how strong the Hades are, there is nothing to be afraid of. The Blood King Beast sneered. These words didn't sound like the words of a mystic spirit that was condensed in the Jioshuan divine world. It was as though he was really the nether devil of the Hades. Blood sacrifice. The human cultivator wants you. I will give you a chance to fight one-on-one. Do you accept? The Blood King Beast could control the blood sacrifice, but it could also choose not to. I accept. The blood sacrifice replied without hesitation. Go, absorb that person's divine soul and essence. Let him stay here forever and become a part of the Jioshuan divine world. The Blood King Beast nodded. When the participants heard these words, they couldn't help but gasp. If that was the case, the Jioshuan divine world wasn't completely safe. There were ways to make one feel as though they were dead, or even more painful than death. Even Han Pe and Yu Qing's expression had a slight change. The two of them didn't seem to know that there was such a method. Only Mo Chenxi's expression didn't change. Li Daochong, I'm helping you. I know that you're strong, but the blood sacrifice is not something you can handle. The Blood King Beast used the blood sacrifice to merge the Jioshuan blood soul that had tempered for 10,000 years into the blood sacrifice's body. He wants to transfer his soul out of the Jioshuan divine world. The blood sacrifice is the real body. Mo Chenxi saw that Li Daochong was determined and had no choice but to tell him this big secret through voice transmission. Li Daochong looked at Mo Chenxi for the first time and nodded slightly as a small thank you to Mo Chenxi for the reminder. To be precise, Li's target is Pan Jialoa. As for the blood sacrifice, Li doesn't care. Mo Chenxi saw the incomparable determination in Li Daochong's eyes and knew that it was useless to say more, so he didn't say anything else. At this time, the blood sacrifice slowly flew to less than 10 meters away from Li Daochong. The two of them faced each other. The contestants were waiting for a good show. To them, it would be a miracle if Li Daochong could hold on for even a second. Yuan Ying was in the Jioshuan divine world, and he might not even be able to defeat the lowest level Jioshuan divine world. Not to mention the blood sacrifice that gave the three heavenly prides a headache. After the first round of testing, the Blood King Beast and the blood sacrifice were the strongest Jioshuan dark demons that had appeared in the Jioshuan divine world for almost a year. No one would have thought that such powerful dark demons would appear in the first round of testing. Why did the honorable Jioshuan divine spirit make such an arrangement? Every contestant had a big question mark in their hearts. How would the second round be tested if that was the case? Did he want all the contestants to comprehend something in the midst of life and death? The honorable divine spirit's intention was naturally not something they could understand. Li Daochong, you have guts. You know that I have become a blood sacrifice, but you still dare to challenge me openly. This saves me the trouble of finding you. Pan Jialoa looked at Li Daochong playfully. Not long ago, Li Daochong was still an undefeatable demon in Pan Jialoa's eyes. In just 1 or 2 hours, Pan Jialoa had become a blood sacrifice that even the three heavenly prides were wary of. The Jioshuan divine world was really amazing. It was impossible to do in the outside world. The Blood King Beast Hades did exist, and the blood sacrifice was also one of the great dark arts. But in the real world, to complete the blood sacrifice, not only did one need a dead soul's primordial spirit, but there were also many other restrictions. It would take 30 years to complete the entire blood sacrifice at the same time. But in here, it could be completed in less than half an hour. The terror of the Jioshuan spirit paragons and the profoundness of the Jioshuan law made everything that happened in the Jioshuan divine world unexplainable. After Pan Jialoa became a blood sacrifice, he enjoyed this state very much. He no longer wanted to go back to the outside world. Here, he could possess incomparably powerful strength. But in the outside world, all of this would no longer exist. Li Daochong lowered his hands and didn't say anything. He just looked at Pan Jialua calmly. Li Daochong, I'm not at a disadvantage against Han Pa and Yu Qinghe. Do you think you're stronger than the two of them? Pan Jialua said with a hint of mockery. Although the spectating contestants all wanted to get rid of the Blood King beast and blood sacrifice as soon as possible, they also hated those who overestimated themselves. They even hoped that the blood sacrifice would quickly finish off Li Daochong. Chapter 853. Li Daochong didn't respond to Pan Jialua's provocative words, as if he didn't hear anything. He just raised his head slightly and took a deep breath. Li Daochong's lips curled into a cold and cruel smile. Ever since he entered the Jiuquan Divine Realm, he had never really used his full strength. Now, he didn't intend to hold back at all. The gentle breeze carried the smell of smoke. The aftermath of the fierce battle just now hadn't dissipated. Li Daochong's aura suddenly changed. The cyclone around him kept rising and soon formed a spiritual highland. The aura of a nascent soul disappeared in an instant. The divinity transformation stage was just a transient transition. Even the peak soul formation stage cultivator didn't stop at all and jumped into the void refinement stage. What? Some of the cultivators in the crowd exclaimed at the same time. This change shocked them so much that their eyes widened. They were not only shocked that Li Daochong's cultivation level could reach the void refinement stage. What was even more unbelievable was that Li Daochong could actually restrain his aura to the Yuanying stage, so that they couldn't detect any abnormalities at all. The terrifying thing was that Li Daochong's aura rose from the Yuanying stage to the void refinement stage so smoothly that it made one's hair stand on end. This meant that he had already entered the void refinement stage. His cultivation level was profound, and he could control it freely. At the very least, he was at the peak of the early stage void refinement stage. Such strength was one of the top in the entire human territory. Many people thought that Li Daochong's ranking on the Namkuan top 10 was too high. Now, it seemed that it was too high. However, it wasn't too high. It was too low. Fellow Taoist Han, didn't the 10,000 Wonder Spirit Talisman say that Ghoul was sneakily attacked by Li Daochong and half of his battle credits were stolen? Did they say that this kid violated morality, so everyone has the right to kill him? Yu Qinghe asked in confusion. Yes. Hanpa was speechless. He was only following orders. As for how Ghoul was killed by Li Daochong, he had no idea. With the cultivation that Li Daochong has displayed so far, there's no need for him to use such despicable methods against Ghoul. Yu Qinghe continued. Hanpa didn't say anything. His eyes were filled with doubt. He knew Nji's capabilities better than anyone else. Other than the talisman, that fellow's battle prowess was not strong. Mo Chinsi's eyes flashed as he looked at Li Daochong. His interest in the latter grew. Li Daochong's breath was still rising. His purple robe fluttered without wind, and he floated up under the effect of spiritual gang. For a moment, it gave people the illusion that an immortal had descended to the mortal world. The Blood King beast was surprised. He didn't expect Li Daochong to be so powerful. As for the reactions around him, Li Daochong was still oblivious. At this moment, he only had eyes for the blood sacrificer, trying to be mysterious, suppressing your cultivation base to the nascent soul realm. What's the use of raising it to your original cultivation base? Li Daochong, I'm no longer the original Pan Jialua. I'm a blood sacrifice. Today, I'm going to imprison your divine soul here. When we get out, I'll blast that card slave into dust and wipe out all the remaining members of the Li family. I'll make you pay for everything you've done to me in double. Buzz. Before Pan Jialua could finish, the void seemed to be torn apart. There was a shocking sound of something breaking through the void. A purple light whizzed out. Pan Jialua raised the blood scythe in his hand to block. Boom! Pan Jialua was sent flying. A purple long saber appeared in Li Daochong's hand. When the purple mystic saber appeared, The void was instantly dyed purple. The blood color was suppressed without any suspense. He sent the blood sacrificer flying with one blow. The contestants watched this scene with their mouths wide open. One had to know the Han Pa almost couldn't handle the blood sacrificer. Li Daochong had sent the blood sacrificer flying with a casual swing of his saber. This stark contrast shocked everyone. Even Mo Chensi was moved. She had been constantly evaluating Li Daochong's strength and repeatedly raised Li Daochong's true strength. However, when Li Daochong attacked, she realized that she had still underestimated him. This blow sent Pan Jialua flying several kilometers away. Bah! Pan Jialua spat out a mouthful of saliva and stopped himself. With a swoosh, he pierced through the air. The blood scythe in his hand carried a terrifying 9 mysterious demonic chi as it slashed towards Li Daochong. The entire space trembled under the blood sacrificer's furious blood scythe. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Just the power visible to the naked eye was enough to frighten most of the contestants. They immediately retreated and ran for their lives. Li Daochong didn't dodge and slashed out with his purple mystic saber. The sun-breaking slash was as easy as pie. He didn't even need to accumulate power. Whoosh! The terrifying saber light covered the sky. The purple saber light wasn't inferior to the blood saber light. In fact, it seemed to be slightly superior. The purple light suppressed the blood-red light. The two terrifying saber lights collided with each other. They didn't have the power to destroy the world. Bam! Bam! Both of them canceled each other out. Pan Jialua couldn't believe what he was seeing. Han Pa couldn't do anything to him even with the universe spear. Yet, Li Daochong was able to fight him to a standstill. How could Li Daochong be stronger than Han Pa? Pan Jialua didn't believe it. However, before he could calm down, a faint purple saber light pierced through the blood-red ripples and attacked him. Pan Jialua was shocked. He quickly used the long handle of his blood scythe to block the saber light. With a bang, the saber light dissipated. Pan Jialua's hand felt numb. When Pan Jialua raised his head to look at Li Daochong, he couldn't see him at his original position. Where did he go? Pan Jialua was puzzled. Here, Li Daochong seemed to have heard Pan Jialua's thoughts and replied indifferently. Pan Jialua felt a chill down his spine. He turned around and saw Li Daochong floating behind him with a cold smile. Bang! Li Daochong punched. Pan Jialua didn't have time to react and was sent flying. He landed on the ground like a cannonball. The earth shook. A terrifying crater appeared on the ground. It was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Dust rose into the sky, splashing thousands of meters high. It was even more terrifying than a nuclear explosion. Looking down from the sky, the crater was dozens of kilometers in diameter. It was as if a huge meteorite had crashed into the ground. All the contestants looked down with their mouths agape and their eyes wide open. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Even Han Pa and Yu Qinghe were moved, their eyes filled with shock. How did a blood sacrifice who had the power to crush everyone become so weak in front of Li Daochong? Li Daochong looked down at the crater. Purple lightning flashed in his eyes. Heavenly lightning technique, eye of lightning punishment. Not only could this divine power be used to attack, but it could also be used to see through everything. The dust that filled the air was nothing to Li Daochong. This kind of attack was naturally very powerful and could definitely injure ordinary nether demons. However, Pan Jialua had already become a blood sacrifice, and he was even stronger under Jiuquan's laws. He was unharmed and didn't even feel anything. Instead, he was completely enraged. The moment he hit the ground, Pan Jialua flew up and attacked Li Daochong without any pause. The blood scythe in his hand turned into a ray of bloodlight. This attack wasn't as powerful as the previous ones, but its penetrative power was enough to penetrate all the defenses of a peak body integration stage cultivator. Bloodthorn. Be careful, Mo Chensi reminded. Li Daochong had no intention of dodging. He could see Pan Jialua's every move clearly. The eye of lightning punishment, which had been accumulating power for a long time, instantly exploded. Boom! Terrifying purple lightning shot out from his eyes. It was as if a cultivator was facing the most terrifying lightning tribulation in the tribulation clouds. 2 bolts of purple lightning struck down. The thunder shook the sky, causing everyone to tremble. Even the blood fiends stopped roaring. They were frightened by the thunder. From the bottom to the top, a ray of blood light that was hidden in the dust rose into the sky. From the top to the bottom, 2 bolts of purple lightning struck down. Boom, 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 boom. The 2 bolts of purple lightning struck the bloodlight. At that moment, Pangaloa turned pale with fright. He felt like he was on the verge of death. The purple lightning struck his body, and he was in extreme pain. It was as if he was being burned by fire and pricked by thousands of needles. What? The Blood King beast, who had been watching the battle, trembled and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood sacrifice was struck by lightning. Even his blood soul was injured by the purple lightning, which affected the Blood King beast's body. Purple Yang, true thunder. A look of shock appeared on Yu Qinghe's refined and handsome face, and the way he looked at Li Daochong had already changed greatly. When Han Pa heard the words, Purple Yang, true thunder, his body trembled. His expression showed that he could not accept it. It was hard for him to accept that such an immortal spell was used by a nobody. Li Daochong, whose spirit sovereign Wan Miao called a despicable and immoral scoundrel, could use a top-level lightning spell. How was this possible? Only Mo Chinsi had a smile on her beautiful face. Finally, Ngun had produced another monster. In the past few hundred years, the young cultivators of the Ngun Empire were getting worse with each generation. In the past 30 years, Ngun almost went out of business if it wasn't for Mo Chinsi's sudden appearance. If Mo Chinsi hadn't come along, Ngun's status in the cultivation empire might have been lost. It was inevitable that he would be oppressed by Qian Song and Yu Qing. Although the Joshuan Spirit Sovereign was Ngun's Spirit Sovereign, Spirit Sovereigns did not have a strong sense of belonging to their territories. In a sense, Spirit Sovereigns were independent existences in the spiritual realm. Ngun Empire had always been overflowing with females. This was often mocked by the cultivators of the other 2 cultivation empires. As a native of Ngun, Mo Chinsi naturally did not want her hometown to be in such a state. Li Daochong's descent from the sky could completely reverse Ngun's decline. How could Mo Chinsi not be happy? This attack, Li Daochong did not hold back. No matter what Pangaloa turned into, he must be killed. 2 bolts of purple lightning blasted the blood sacrificer back into the ground without any suspense. Li Daochong moved. Like a shooting star, he chased after the blood sacrificer who was killed by the purple lightning. He activated the 1,000-sound escape. His extreme speed was as fast as lightning. In an instant, he broke through the air, bringing with him a fierce whirlwind. There was a buzzing sound. It was as if a hole had been drilled through space. The dust in the air was blown away in the blink of an eye. Boom! A loud noise came from below. The dust in the big pit was also blown away. Everyone could clearly see that Li Daochong was stepping on the blood sacrificer's chest. Puff! The blood sacrificer spat out a mouthful of blood. Bang, bang, bang. The dull sound of the beating was like the beating of a war drum. Every sound was proof that Li Daochong's fist had landed on the blood sacrificer's chest. The blood sacrificer, who was almost invincible in front of the other contestants, was beaten by Li Daochong to the point that he could not even fight back. In the sky, there was dead silence. Who do you think you are? At this moment, his words were so ignorant and laughable. A bean-sized bead of sweat dripped down the back of Han Po's head. For the first time, he doubted Spirit Sovereign Wan Miao's words. The Blood Beast King finally could not hold it in anymore. It tried its best to hide the fear in its heart and roared, "Children, enjoy your food to your heart's content." Roar! The 90 blood beasts had their shackles removed. They were like mad beasts that had been starved for 3 days and 3 nights. They roared and charged towards the contestants. Chapter 854. The Blood Fiend was like a drug addict who had taken too much immortal herb. The contestants were frightened by the Blood Fiend. Fortunately, they had the upper hand in terms of numbers, so they were able to deal with it in groups of 3 to 5. The Blood Fiend dragon rushed toward Hanpa and the other two. However, Yulai, Luo Qingmu, and Shangwan Yuehong attacked at the same time and stopped it. In this way, the three elites faced the Blood Fiend dragon. 3 against 1. No matter how one looked at it, they had the upper hand. The Blood Fiend dragon's attention was not on the 3 elites. All of its attention was on the Blood Shaman, who had been beaten by Li Daochong. The Blood Soul was injected into the Blood Shaman's body. If the Blood Shaman was killed by Li Daochong, all of the Blood Fiend dragon's efforts would be in vain. However, after Li Daochong appeared, the situation began to tilt toward the contestants. When the Blood Fiend dragon came to its senses, it was too late. The Blood Fiend dragon was unwilling to give up. Its eyes were full of bloodlight, and the Blood Fiend chi around it exploded. Whoosh! The Blood Fiend dragon disappeared. Try to run? Hanpa shouted and threw the Universe Spear. At the same time, Yu Qinghe controlled the clear jade shield to attack. No matter how powerful the Blood Fiend dragon was, it could not ignore the 2 elites' attacks. It was blocked in the air and could not get away to help the Blood Shaman. Mo Chinsi followed suit. Silver threads instantly weaved into a giant invisible net, trapping the Blood King beast within a specific space. The Blood Fiend dragon appeared with the Blood Scythe in its hand and blocked the Universe Spear and the clear jade shield. It looked at the 3 elites with a ferocious expression and growled. "Get out of my way, all 3 of you." "It's not up to you," Hanpa sneered. The Blood Fiend dragon was furious. It would be too late if it did not save the Blood Shaman. Crimson Reincarnation. The Blood Fiend dragon roared and its bones cracked. Then, 7 blood-colored bone spurs extended from its body. Each bone spur wriggled and turned into a Blood Fiend dragon. 7 doppelgangers appeared in the void at once. The 3 elites were shocked. They did not expect the Blood Fiend dragon to have 7 clones. As soon as the clones appeared, they attacked immediately. Before the 3 geniuses could think any further, the 7 clones had already attacked. Clones under the effects of a spell were usually weaker than the real body. Moreover, the clones would take a portion of the true body's energy. The more clones there were, the more energy would be taken away from the true body. The Blood King beast must have consumed a lot of energy to create 7 clones at the same time. It might even have exhausted the Blood Devil chi in his body. A mere clone wants to stop the 3 of us. Blood King beast, could it be that you've been trapped in the Jioshuan god world for too long that you've lost your mind? Hanpa said in disdain as he retrieved his Universe Spear. As soon as he finished speaking, a Blood King beast avatar charged toward Hanpa with a bone spear in its hand. When it came to spears, Hanpa had never been afraid of anyone. With a cold smile, the Universe Spear shot out. There weren't too many fancy moves, only stability, accuracy, and ruthlessness. The Cosmic Spear pierced straight towards the head of the Blood King's avatar, intending to kill it in one strike. Clang crack. However, just as the Blood King's avatar was about to be pierced by the Universe Spear, it suddenly moved horizontally like a phantom. Hanpo's attack was easily dodged. The Bone Spear and the Universe Spear collided, producing an ear-piercing sound. Hanpo's arm went numb, and he flew back dozens of meters before stopping. The Blood King's avatar was also sent flying back dozens of meters. In a simple exchange, the Blood King's avatar and Hanpo were actually tied. Hanpo's face froze. The words he had just spoken were a slap to his face. Before he could think further, the other Blood King's avatar attacked from the side with a bone spear. Damn it! Hanpo cursed and hurriedly waved his Universe Spear to block. With the Universe technique activated, Hanpo didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. The Blood King's avatar's strength wasn't much weaker than the true body's. It was almost on par with the blood sacrifice. Not only Hanpo, but Yu Qinghe's situation wasn't much better either. The 2 Blood King's avatars attacked from both sides at lightning speed. If Yu Qinghe didn't have an immortal level shield like the clear jade shield, he probably wouldn't have been able to block it. The two Sky Prides were caught off guard. From this, one could see how powerful the Blood King's avatars were. 2 against 1, they could gain the upper hand in a short time. Of the 7 Blood King avatars, the remaining 3 attacked Emochensi. In the eyes of the Blood King beast, in the eyes of the Sky Prides, Emochensi was the most unpredictable. He couldn't see through this woman at all. Although Emochensi was strong, under the relentless bombardment of the 3 Blood King's avatars, he had no choice but to withdraw the silver threads he had released to fight against the 3 avatars. On the other side, the battle between Ma Lai, Luo Qingmu, and Shangwan Yuehong against the berserk demonic sanguine dragon had reached its climax. After the 3 demonic sanguine dragons merged, their combat strength increased greatly. If not for Ma Lai's runic robe, which had many transformations and various defensive runes, all automatically activated defensive effects. If not, the 3 of them would have been killed by the berserk demonic sanguine dragon. However, they couldn't go on like this. Ma Lai's runic robe would eventually be exhausted. Shangwan Yuehong controlled hundreds of cloud-piercing flying swords to attack the berserk demonic sanguine dragon. Luo Qingmu waited for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Ma Lai stood in front as a meat shield. With the 3 of them working together, they could barely hold on. However, at this moment, 3 cracks appeared on Ma Lai's runic robe. Oh no, the energy of the Spirit Stone is about to be used up. Ma Lai shouted with a frightened expression. As soon as the robe was broken, he would be torn to pieces by the berserk demonic sanguine dragon. As soon as he shouted, hiss! The berserk demonic sanguine dragon tore off a sleeve of the robe. Ma Lai didn't dare to be a meat shield anymore. He turned around and ran. Luo Qingmu saw the opportunity and controlled 3 golden thorns to attack the berserk demonic sanguine dragon's back. Clang! Clang! 3 crisp sounds were heard. The golden thorns hit the berserk demonic sanguine dragon's back. However, the golden thorns, which could penetrate a heavenly mystic high-grade Dharma treasure, did not even leave a mark on the berserk demonic sanguine dragon's scales. What? Luo Qingmu looked as if he had seen a ghost. These 3 golden thorns were Dharma treasures that his master had spent 10 years to refine. Luo Qingmu had never failed to use the golden thorns. The berserk demonic sanguine dragon didn't feel anything. It didn't even pause. Its huge body flashed and appeared in front of Shangwan Yuehong. Its huge demonic claws slammed toward Shangwan Yuehong. In an instant, Shangwan Yuehong's face turned pale. She sighed in despair. She didn't expect that she would have to go to the resurrection point. Zong! In an instant, a purple light flashed. Shangwan Yuehong, who thought that she was going to die, opened her mouth wide. She looked at the huge berserk demonic sanguine dragon in front of her in disbelief. The demonic claws were cut off from the shoulder by the purple light. No matter how the 3 of them attacked, they couldn't cause any damage to the berserk demonic sanguine dragon. The blood-red scales on the berserk demonic sanguine dragon were tougher than ordinary Dharma treasures. However, in front of the purple light, the berserk demonic sanguine dragon was cut open easily. Roar! The berserk demonic sanguine dragon let out an earth-shattering roar. The pain from his shoulder made him feel a trace of fear. Zong! The sound of something breaking through the air. Li Daochong suddenly appeared. Roar! The berserk demonic sanguine dragon, who had lost an arm, kept roaring. The intense pain made him even more manic. He opened his sharp mouth and bit toward Li Daochong's head. He was determined to eat this ant who had cut off his arm. Li Daochong frowned. The saber wasn't aimed at the berserk demonic sanguine dragon. It was aimed at the fleeing blood sacrifice. Now that the berserk demonic sanguine dragon was blocking his way, Li Daochong's eyes turned cold. He raised his saber and slashed. Half of the berserk demonic sanguine dragon's head was cut off like mud. Puff! The berserk demonic sanguine dragon was left with a bloody hole. Blood spurted out from the hole. Zung! 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 The saber light was like a net, cutting the rest of the berserk demonic sanguine dragon's body into pieces. Li Daochong reached out and grabbed a fist-sized blood demon core. With a gentle pinch, the blood demon core turned into powder. Ma Lai, Luo, Qingmu, and Shangwan Yuehong stared at this scene as if they were frozen in time. The berserk, demonic sanguine dragon that they felt they couldn't defeat was killed by Li Daochong as easily as cutting vegetables. When Li Daochong crushed the blood demon core, he had already disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he was several kilometers away in the sky, intercepting the fleeing blood sacrifice. Pan Jialua saw that he couldn't defeat Li Daochong. The difference in strength was bigger than he had imagined. He burned his blood demon core and used the blood escape technique to escape. The blood escape technique could achieve the effect of teleportation in a short distance. Pan Jialua thought he could escape no matter what. To be safe, his escape route passed by the blood demonic sanguine dragon to delay Li Daochong for a while. Pan Jialua's calculation was correct. The blood demonic sanguine dragon had indeed blocked Li Daochong's attack and delayed him for a while. However, he didn't expect Li Daochong's speed to be several times faster than the blood escape technique. In the blink of an eye, he had caught up with him. Li Daochong, let me go, and I'll immediately remove the time explosion talisman from your maid. I'll never provoke you again. Furthermore, I'll help you in the upcoming competition so that you can easily obtain first place in this competition. How about it? Seeing that he couldn't escape, Pan Jialua rolled his eyes and immediately begged for mercy. Li Daochong acted as if he didn't hear him. The cold air around him was oppressive, and the absolute cold domain enveloped Pan Jialua. Damn it, Li Daochong, are you forcing me to fight to the death? Pan Jialua saw that begging for mercy was useless and said angrily, "The fish won't die, and the net won't break. Don't be afraid. You won't die." Li Daochong smiled coldly. Good. You are ruthless. I will fight with you." Pan Jialua said good 3 times in a row, and his face became ferocious. Whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, an extremely soft sound came from behind Li Daochong. It was almost inaudible. Li Daochong turned around and slashed. Star slash. Clang boom. The Blood Beast King appeared behind Li Daochong like a ghost and slashed down with its blood scythe with infinite anger. The Blood Beast King used 120% of its strength and activated the blood escape technique to the extreme, coupled with the unexpected sneak attack. It thought that it could kill Li Daochong with its blood scythe. However, Li Daochong still noticed it. What was even more frightening was that Li Daochong was actually able to instantly release a divine ability that was comparable to his opponent. In the fight, Li Daochong quickly retreated dozens of meters away. Blood gushed out from his wrist, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was split open. The Blood Beast King didn't have it easy either. It bounced back more than 10 meters, and a huge gap appeared on its blood scythe. Its chest was churning, and blood was flowing out uncontrollably. Chapter 855. The Blood King Beast split into 7 clones. Although the clones didn't take away the blood demon chi in his body, the Blood King's sacrifice, fusion, and division art had used up a lot of blood demon chi. The Blood King Beast wasn't in its best condition. The Blood King Beast didn't gain the slightest bit of advantage from the clash. It was even injured by Li Daochong. Li Daochong was also injured, but it was only a superficial wound. The Blood King Beast's internal injuries were obviously much more serious. The instant Li Daochong's recoil disappeared, he flew forward like a bolt of lightning. Before the Blood King Beast could suppress the churning in its chest, it saw Li Daochong rushing over. Damn it! Why is this Li Daochong so powerful? The Blood King Beast cursed and asked in its mind. It was asking about the blood sacrifice. Li Daochong's strength was far beyond the highest level in Pan Jialua's memory. Pan Jialua didn't know what was going on, so how could he answer the Blood King Beast? Pan Jialua was in a daze and didn't know what to do. The despair in his heart kept spreading. After becoming a blood sacrifice, Pan Jialua tasted unprecedented power. He thought he would be invincible in the Jiuquan divine realm. Before he could taste the feeling of invincibility, Li Daochong stomped on him. Pan Jialuo had fought with Han Pe and Yu Qinghe before. The three prodigies were definitely heaven-defying existences. Why was Li Daochong more powerful than them? That was impossible. Pan Jialuo looked at Li Daochong as if he had seen a ghost. Boom! Li Daochong didn't use any power. He just crashed into the Blood King Beast's chest with his body. The Blood King Beast spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at Li Daochong in disbelief. This guy didn't use any moves and just used his body. Humiliation, naked humiliation. Roar! The Blood King Beast let out a terrifying roar, ignoring the churning blood demon qi in its body. Bracing himself against Li Daochong's violent impact, he clenched his demon claws and punched at Li Daochong. Bang! He punched Li Daochong in the face. The Blood King Beast fell to the ground like a meteorite. A mushroom cloud soared into the sky. The Demon Flame Mountain Range no longer looked like a mountain range. There was a huge hole in the ground. Li Daochong, on the other hand, was blasted into the sky by the fist and disappeared without a trace. Apart from the three heavens favorites, any other cultivator would have had their physical body shattered into pieces by now, leaving only their yuan shen behind. Although Pan Jialuo was in despair, his consciousness was no longer under the control of his main consciousness. He was now a part of the Blood King Beast. The Blood King Beast was trying its best to protect the blood soul hidden in the blood sacrifice's body. That was the only secret way for the Blood King Beast to leave the Jiuquan divine realm. Once he lost it, he would never be able to reincarnate. He could only be a thought entity in the Jiuquan divine realm. His existence was dependent on the Jiuquan Spirit Lord's will. The Blood King Beast would never miss this opportunity. The moment Li Daochong was knocked away, the blood sacrifice immediately performed the blood escape art and burned a few drops of blood. He risked damaging his yuan shen and ran away like a frightened bird. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. In the blink of an eye, the blood sacrifice was dozens of kilometers away. Such speed was indeed astonishing. A late-stage combination cultivator might not be able to achieve such speed even if he burned his yuan shen. Dozens of kilometers was not safe, so the blood sacrifice didn't dare to be careless. Pan Jialuo, is it fun to run around in my realm of absolute frost? Li Daochong's cold voice suddenly sounded in the blood sacrifice's ears. Pan Jialuo looked around in fear, but Li Daochong was nowhere to be seen. Was he hallucinating? But the voice just now was so real, as if it was right next to his ears. Suddenly, the environment in Pan Jialuo's eyes retreated and disappeared quickly like a dream. Pan Jialuo only felt dizzy. Then, he came back to his senses with a whoosh. He saw Li Daochong floating less than 10 meters in front of him with his hands behind his back. He was still in his original position and hadn't moved at all. You? Pan Jialuo was so shocked that he couldn't speak. The scene of him escaping just now was actually an illusion. It was an illusion supported by Li Daochong's divine will. You want to escape? Break through the realm of absolute frost first. Li Daochong looked at the blood sacrifice sharply. He was like an eagle flying high in the sky looking at a crazily escaping prey on the ground. No matter how he escaped, he couldn't escape from the advantage of being in the sky. Pan Jialuo's legs were a little weak. The illusion meant that Li Daochong's divine will had broken through his demon will barrier and affected his consciousness. If he went one step further and entered the demon god, he wouldn't be able to resist anymore. By then, he would be at Li Daochong's mercy. Sensing the threat, the Blood King Beast's true body rushed down like a madman. Li Daochong, don't you dare. The Blood King Beast's voice became hysterical. Li Daochong turned a deaf ear. His divine will surged out like a tidal wave and wrapped around Pan Jialuo. Pan Jialuo's consciousness wanted to make a final struggle, but it was futile in front of absolute power. Li Daochong hadn't used the divine will absolute kill since he mastered the 9-crack saber technique. He didn't hold back at all. No, seeing that it was too late to stop him, the Blood King Beast let out a desperate roar, and watched the blood red and the blood sacrifice's eyes fade quickly. What replaced it was paleness. Pan Jalawa's consciousness was annihilated by Li Daocheng's divine, absolute kill. The blood soul hidden in his body was extremely fragile and couldn't escape either. A wisp of light green soul power overflowed from the blood sacrifice's body. That was Pan Jalawa's remaining consciousness. Li Daocheng didn't kill Pan Jalawa. Instead, he scattered his primordial spirit, leaving only a wisp of consciousness. Then, he used the mystery of Jiuquan's law that he comprehended to integrate Pan Jalawa's remaining consciousness into the Jiuquan divine realm. He made him a mysterious spirit body in the Jiuquan divine realm, imprisoned here with no possibility of leaving. Unless he had cultivated for thousands of years like the Blood King beast, and had excellent luck to absorb millions of mysterious primordial spirits to refine his true soul. He also had to beg the Jiuquan spirit Lord to let him in. Then, he had to use a secret technique to let his true soul enter the outsider soul body. Even if all this could be achieved, he might not be able to get out. Just like the Blood King beast, he already had all the conditions mentioned above and encountered a dead soul body like Pan Jalawa. It seemed to be in the bag. In the end, he met Li Daocheng, who made all his efforts go down the drain with a single thought. The Blood King beast felt that his demon core was about to shatter. Li Daocheng, I want you dead. The Blood King beast turned into a blood-red meteor and crashed into Li Daocheng. It streaked across the sky and a blood-red flame burned. The Blood King beast was furious and his heart was dead. At this time, he directly burned his blood demon's soul power and wanted to perish together with Li Daocheng. Li Daocheng's body exploded with purple lightning, and the purple mystic saber slashed down. Heavenly Thunder Art, 9 thunderbolts. The saber light carried 9 purple sun true thunderbolts and blasted down. The sky was covered by purple clouds, and the purple thunderbolts that fell were the most terrifying tribulation lightning. Boom, boom, boom. The 9 purple thunderbolts all struck the burning Blood King beast. The Blood King beast's final struggle became insignificant under the 9 thunderbolts. The first purple thunderbolt extinguished the blood-red flame. No, it's impossible. The Blood King beast murmured at the last moment. Its blood-red eyes were wide open, and it was blasted into ashes by the purple thunderbolts in disbelief and dissipated. 10,000 years of cultivation dissipated just like that. If it could gather a trace of lingering thoughts, it could do it again. But whether it would have such luck or not was unknown. As for whether the Jiuquan spirit sage knew the Blood King beast's intention, it was also unknown. Maybe the spirit sage was careless, or maybe she did it on purpose. In short, the Blood King beast could not escape the restraint of the Jiuquan spirit sage's law. Although Li Daocheng's battle was fierce and majestic, the other contestants had no time to care about it. The violent blood fiends were so terrifying that even 3 or 4 contestants would be in a precarious situation if they went up against one. If Li Daocheng had not killed the violent blood demon dragon and freed Ma Lai, Luo Qingmu, and Shangwan Yuehong, they would have been able to help the other contestants. Otherwise, more than half of them would have been killed or injured. But even so, they could not be careless in the battle. If they were careless, they might be torn to pieces by the violent blood beasts. Ma Lai was able to fight a violent blood beast one-on-one at first. But as time went on, Ma Lai began to feel a little powerless. The spiritual energy in his body was greatly depleted, and his physical strength began to decline. The violent blood beast was like a machine that did not know fatigue. Its speed and strength did not decrease at all. Finally, after hundreds of attacks, Ma Lai could not resist anymore, and his chest was torn open by the violent blood beast's claw. Ma Lai grunted and flew backward. Before he could stop himself, the violent blood beast had already appeared in front of him and grabbed the top of his head with its giant demonic claw. The violent blood beast opened its bloody mouth and bit at Ma Lai's neck. Ma Lai waved the weapon in his hand and tried to stop the violent blood beast from biting down. But it was useless. Just when Ma Lai thought he was going to the resurrection point. Bang. Suddenly, the violent blood beast exploded. It self-destructed without any warning. Bang, bang, bang. Then a series of explosions came from the void. It was like the sound of firecrackers in the last second of New Year's Eve. 90 violent blood beasts self-destructed just like that. On the other side, the 7 Blood King beast clones that were fighting the 3 prodigies were much more powerful than the violent blood beasts. Fortunately, this explosive force was insignificant to the 3 prodigies. Li Daochong floated in the air. All the participating cultivators turned to look at him. The surroundings were silent. The battlefield that had been filled with fierce fighting a moment ago had turned into a graveyard of dead silence. No one had expected Li Daochong to kill the demonic blood dragon, blood sacrifice, and blood king beast single-handedly. Even Han Pe, Yu Qinghe, and Mo Chinsi fell into deep thought. No one knew what they were thinking. Those cultivators who had looked down on Li Daochong and even mocked him when he first appeared were not slapped in the face, but it was more painful than being slapped in the face. The first round of the test is over. The second round of the test will begin immediately. The war achievement rankings will be made public to all participants who have entered the second round of the test. Those who do not obtain 100,000 war achievements will be ejected from the Jiuquan Divine Realm. Suddenly, a deep and majestic voice sounded in everyone's mind, announcing the end of the first round of the test. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.